Joshua, I don't really know what's happening with CM Punk and Roman Reigns. I wouldn't know how to summarize it to somebody not watching Raw, other than CM Punk live on Raw tonight went on television and said, "We just say shit to each other to try to sell tickets and try to build a fight." And the words don't hurt me. And then said, and then he addressed the old thing, which he did, and then of course react to. And then Roman's being a jerk to Jimmy and Jay. Jay is on Roman's side. Fans are loudly chanting OTC and cheering for Roman, I think, more than Punk. People think Punk is old now that Reigns said that. Punk said he's okay with being old. I think this is meant to just be, hey, these two guys are iconic big stars. They're going to go at it, and they're letting loose on each other verbally. But, you see CM Punk as your world heavyweight champion standing in the ring, kind of dealing with a crowd that, like, I don't know, if you booked him against a heel, they'd be cheering him and they'd be having a good time cheering him. But they book him against Roman, who's a babyface, who's more cool than Punk in a lot of people's eyes. And so Punk's standing there navigating a crowd response he's not used to. That's a little incongruent with, I think, what he's going for, but I think he's cognizant of it as a possibility. And there's a fan holding up a sign 8 rows deep right behind him that says, "You're old." I'm not saying this is a disaster, because it's compelling and maybe it'll work. And I'm not saying maybe it'll work like good luck with it. I'm saying it might really work, but I just don't know how to describe this to anybody right now. As a strategy, it's sort of this modern day, throw them in the ring, let them talk to each other, trying to, I guess, redo Cena Rock in a way. So those are some of my thoughts. I'm very curious for yours, Joshua.
Yeah, in spite of every single segment they've had between these two have had like almost egregious flaws, but it's always been compelling. And
right.
I thought this segment continued that trend.
Yep.
Like you noted, him pointing out that, hey, we just talk shit to sell tickets. Like doesn't do any good. And then he also said that the talk doesn't bother him, which kind of undermines what he had just said they were doing. Which was unfortunate, because I thought before that he was doing a pretty good job of focusing on the match, how he was going to beat him. He's going to take him to deep waters and beat him, and he can't win without his help from his cousins, which is theoretically true in canon. But yeah, unfortunately, like you said, it's a face-to-face matchup, and best case scenario, it's going to be split 50-50. And I think you're probably right that they're leaning towards Roman. Like, he is just cooler. And Punk is old. So it's kind of hard for him. And he did a good job, I think, of owning being old this week, and even kind of explaining why maybe he overreacted to being old. And it just seems like they've been kind of going back and forth. Like the first week, like Roman Reigns had like the mic drop moment to end that promo. And then the second week, Punk had the mic drop, "your dad's dead" moment to end the promo.
For better, for worse, yeah.
Yeah, for worse in most situations. But
yeah.
Then you had the Usos in between. But then last week you had Roman clearly getting under Punk's skin, provoking an attack. And then this week it was like essentially the opposite. CM Punk provoking Roman. And Roman attacks and beats him up. I wondered when they started this how long they would be able to drag it out with WrestleMania so far away. And I think we still have 3 Raws. So they have got to be running thin on material. So like I would say this wasn't as good or like as electric as some of their previous ones, but I think this was still good, even if we're getting diminishing returns with them just talking to each other every week.
Yeah, I was watching that going, are we going to get a CM Punk Jey Uso match before WrestleMania? Jay's this hothead, and I mean, it seems to make sense they could do that, but should Punk be wrestling before WrestleMania? Is a guy who, what Drew call him? Brittle Phil? It's taken a really big chance if he gets in the ring. You hate to, play into the he's old thing, but I mean, there can be, I don't want to say he's cursed, Danhausen didn't curse him, but there is something about putting that out into the sphere and having to, it lands for a reason.
And also like Adam Pearce has been keep saying, hey, don't be doing matches. You don't want to ruin the greatest main event of WrestleMania of all time. Like, he didn't even want him fighting Finn last month. So I can only imagine how upset he would be if he just starts handing out title shots to Jey Uso to ruin what could be the biggest WrestleMania main event in history.
Yeah. Adam Pearce could just be crazy, and this would be like so WWE, we got TV time to fill. Just force Punk and Roman to team together against the Usos or something, just, or I don't know, Jay and Roman against Jimmy and Punk or something, or do a 4-way, do a 4-way and protect everybody. but I joke, but it's like they have time to fill, and I don't know how much more they can just kind of do what I tried to sort of summarize. And like my mind works like a journalist. I look at, I've done this for decades and decades. I look at a situation, and then in my mind, I'm like, okay, what would be the lead? And how would I structure this? What's the most important thing that you want in that first sentence and the follow-up? And then in what order do you go into detail, and how much detail do you go into the points before you summarize them? And then how do you revisit them to add more detail that you didn't want to bog down the first 3 paragraphs with? So my writer's mind likes to bring that to a show like this too. And so I'm sitting here trying to think, well, how would you write a story on what we just watched? And I can't like, I have my opinion to a degree. It's not hardened, but that's not even the point. It's just a fact. This is all over the place. It's just Roman's acting like an asshole. Fans love him. Punk is saying things that sound hypocritical, like I'm not thin-skinned, and then he snaps, stuff like that. But he seems like the more reasonable, nice guy in this situation. Roman's being a jerk to his family. Michael Cole saying Roman proved one thing tonight: it's he doesn't need his family. After Cole 2 minutes earlier said Roman sucker punches Punk after Jey Uso. This is just like, I mean, if there's a benefit of the doubt being given because of the stature of Roman and Punk and what they've done, the Bloodline storyline, the Paul Levesque having some goodwill built up. I don't know how much of that is spent now. There's some grace being given, but if WWE like 2 months ago had fired everybody and hired some new booker with a bad reputation, we'd be tearing into this. We'd have plenty of material to tear into, and fair or unfair. So I don't know. I mean, the crowd gets to decide. I mean, I don't know that they had a better option, and I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying it's different, and I don't quite know how to frame it. I mean, I'm sorry, real legend. I just caught my eye here. Roman has always been an asshole, and Punk has always been a hypocrite. I mean, there's something poignant to that. We are watching an asshole and a hypocrite, and they're both mega baby faces who fans either like one or the other, one and not the other, or one more than the other, or both equally. The question is how much of this tearing each other down sticks afterwards, and perhaps more pertinently, how much of it just feels like, I don't know if I even want to see this. I want to see it, but do I need to see it? Because they just end up feeling like they both are kind of immature and bickering, as opposed to it feeling big and going down the road of you're a part-timer who has one foot out the door versus an old guy with a gray beard. And he's comparing himself to these pitchers in baseball who are on their last legs. And I don't know, it doesn't feel like WWE is happening and these are the stars of today. It's like this kind of flailing last gasp because they haven't built the next generation, and the old generation, as they always do if they're in power, hold on, and make a strong case for it. So I'm sounding more down on this than I am. I'm just sort of laying out my feelings, but I also think this could all oddly turn out to just be like, there could be high interest in it too. I don't know how to organize this chaos, Joshua.
Yeah, I think the only reason it even is not just completely falling apart is just the sheer star power of both people.
Yep.
Like if they had this exact same build for any number of other pairs of people, would just be horrible and just looked down upon by me, you, and everybody in the chat here.
Yep.
But because of their massive star power, because they're both so over, because that's the only reason, like, it even, and to be fair, they've done a good job of, as scattershot and off the wall and fourth wall breaking as it has been at times, it has still mostly been like kind of appointment television to see these two just stand in a ring across from each other. Don't get me wrong, they're running low on how many times they can do that. I'm guessing they can do it 3 more times. But yeah, the only reason it even works is just because of the sheer star power of the two. Because they're not building each other up. They're not making either one seem better than they came in. They're both going down. on the plus side, I don't think it'll hurt either of them in the long term. I assume after WrestleMania, Roman will disappear till around SummerSlam. When he comes back, he'll be just a giant, massive baby face and as over as ever. And Punk will be, I don't know, retired maybe? He is pretty old, I've heard.
Yes. What did you think of Punk laughing at the end? And they drew attention to it. Like this was, baked into, it wasn't like improvising. He's like, he gets driven through the announce desk and then clutches his left forearm in pain, and he's writhing in pain, but he's also laughing. And the announcers draw attention to it as Roman walks away looking like he got humiliated or upset, as opposed to like he took his WrestleMania opponent down and should be happy, but he didn't seem happy. There was no celebration. Punk was one who was laughing. So I guess the psychology is supposed to be Punk is satisfied that he caused Roman to snap and Superman punch him and put him through a table a month before WrestleMania.
Yeah, I mean, I assume it's like the opposite of psychology from last week, because whenever Punch punked Roman for being old, like Roman just smiled and laughed because he got under his skin. And as Punk kind of put out there in the middle of his promo, that's the actual purpose of all this. Going through a table, that's not going to help him win the match at WrestleMania. Getting under Roman's skin, that is apparently how he will win the match at WrestleMania. So I guess the idea of Punk laughing is, hey, I got him. I'm under his skin. I'm in his head. I got this match down, and I'm really happy about it, even though I'm in extraordinary pain.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's pause, introduce ourselves in the show here, and then there's some really fun comments in the chat that I just glanced at. I want to put on the screen and read. I think people have opinions on this, and some witticisms too. The Just for Men line was Swole74 says the Just for Men line was the best line. There's others who have been commenting on that, so we'll get into that. I mean, the weird part is that might be the one that sticks. Is everyone's going to look at Roman and go, how gray is he under that? Like that could be
because Roman is not young. Like Punk is old, but Roman is not a young man.
Yeah. And Punk's like, if I was ashamed, I would. I mean, and then Drew McIntyre was like, no one said my name, but I feel like I've been called out. But he's so jet black. I mean, he's not trying to look like, oh, I don't look quite old enough where the gray hair fits, so I'm gonna try to get my hair back to its natural stage or soften the gray. Everybody, so many people in their 40s do that and beyond. He looks like I'm just going jet black because that's my look. Like I don't think Drew would be like, of course I mean, no human has naturally this color, but Punk's going, Roman's trying to look like something he's not. He's saying there's hypocrisy here, calling me old, but I'm not ashamed of it, and he is. And so that did land. And I think that's why people are talking about it. All right. Let's, like I said, introduce ourselves here. This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show for Monday, March 23rd, 2026. I am Wade Keller, host of the show, editor, publisher, and founder of the Pro Wrestling Torch weekly newsletter and the website PWTorch.com, and the host of the Wade Keller Post Shows and podcasts. The Wade Keller Pro Wrestling podcast is podcast only. The post shows, as opposed to the podcast, the red, blue logo instead of the red. When you search Wade Keller, you'll see both logos pop up. The blue logo show is just podcast only. We're not on YouTube. So if you're watching us on YouTube, first of all, please hit the subscribe button and like this show. And even better, comment and get a conversation going with other listeners. All that is helpful. But number two, search Wade Keller in your podcast app and subscribe to the red logo show and the blue logo show. Jason Powell from ProWrestling.net is with me tomorrow. We'll be recording early afternoon and dropping it later in the day. And you can send your questions to wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. Topic suggestions, rants. And on the flagship, we just cover everything. So we'll, preview the WrestleMania lineup. We'll talk big picture topics. We'll talk TNA Impact, whatever. So all questions are open. Well, I'm sure we'll talk some Midnight Express with the death of Dennis Condrey this last week. So Jason and I have lots of Midnight Express memories, and we'll be discussing that too. So you're invited and encouraged to be part of the mailbag segments, or we'll sprinkle it in. If we get enough emails, we might even do a separate show, mailbag shows. So if it's one of those weeks where we just get so many of them, we might even do a separate recording. So that's wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. We are here, though, to talk live on the PWTorch YouTube channel and then distributed on our red logo show, the Wade Keller Post Show. We're here to discuss Raw. And the other voice you hear along with me is Joshua White. He is a PWTorch contributor. Joshua, welcome back to the co-host chair.
Hey, it's great to be here. And I also heard you say that for the flagship, you were accepting rants. So
yes.
I might write in, even though I usually don't, because I do love a good rant.
Okay, do it. Love
Great.
it. Rants are good. Rants are fun. All right. So if you want to participate in the show, by the way, you can rant right now by email. Wade Keller postshow@gmail.com is the best way to reach us for our live shows after Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown. By the way, here on the PWTorch YouTube channel, Kelly Wells, Nate Lindbergh, and crew have the NXT post show that goes live right after NXT or a few minutes after NXT on Tuesday nights. And then we also have our post PLE and pay-per-view shows on the weekends with a mix of hosts. Greg Parks is the OG of Wrestling Night in America, but we have other hosts jumping in and helping out too. So those are all on our YouTube channel if you want to watch our post shows live. But you can participate right now, or if you don't watch us live, the email is the way to participate. Let's say you watch Raw, Dynamite, or SmackDown, you want to be on the show, but you got to go to bed or do other things. Email us, wadekellerpostshow@gmail.com, and then you can listen later. Or if you are watching us live, you can join the chat. The chat's wonderful. It's a great group of people. They really contribute to the show, and it's, I think, one of the better, more cordial, smart, friendly atmospheres in wrestling discourse. And I'm proud of the group for keeping it that way for years now. So you can be part of growing that and staying consistent with that. And we're going to throw some of those comments up on the screen. You can also be a caller on the show. You can find a link if you want to be on the show as a caller in my TV reports at PWTorch. Just look for the link at the top or bottom of my Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown reports. That link changes every time, so you got to go to the website to find it. And I invite you to read my reports covering Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Although I'll be at Dynamite Wednesday, and I'll hopefully be calling into the show afterwards. But Brian Zillum and Taylor Haley will be on there. The Collision Cafe VIP duo will be taking over the post-show, the main part of it. But like I said, I'm hoping to call in and be part of the show after going live in person. I got off track. What I was going to say there. Oh, so yeah, you can be a video caller or you can turn your camera off and be an audio caller, just like our Blog Talk Radio days. Find the link in my reports, and of course, just read them also. All right. Let's get back to those comments that I talked about on this closing segment with Roman and Punk. And then, of course, we'll move from here on to other topics on the show, including the latest with Femi and Brock Lesnar, the latest with Becky Lynch and AJ Lee, tag team title match, Penta and Dom, in what started out as a match and then quickly ended as an angle. It didn't really feel like we got a full-fledged match. I second your little bit of an eye roll there, Joshua. And whatever else I left out. So we'll cover other aspects of the show coming up. Okay. So Darrell in the chat, longtime caller to our show over the years, says, okay, Raw, but the ending could have been better. Swole74 says, of course, Roman has to sucker punch for the advantage. Great segment, or great segment. Can't tell Swole, sorry. Derek Mitchell says, the king of super chats, by the way. Everyone's invited. If you want to super chat us like $1 million and outdo Derek Mitchell, I may or may not be here next week if you do that. No, I do this anyway. I thought this week's main event segment was better than last week's offering. Interesting. What do you think of that, Joshua? That controversial statement from Derek?
I don't find it all that controversial. I mean, I think he's gotten a point. Like, this seemed more contrived. Like, I would argue you don't need Jimmy and Jey Uso to be part of this feud at all. So their involvement, I could see maybe detracted from it. With Roman and Punk going on, I think they've been getting progressively worse since the first one. Mm-hmm. They've just been kind of spiraling downhill, I would say. This one was maybe not as good as last week, but I don't know. It's kind of fresh in my mind too, so maybe I'm overly critical of it.
Yeah, I think there's aspects of each segment that have been better than others and aspects that are worse than others. And I think to a degree, it's just you're seeing the same thing. So the novelty isn't there. And it sometimes feels like, oh, what are we going to do this week to fill some time? How do we find that material? The first week was a little too break the fourth wall, meta backstage. Punk, you should be champion because you lie about how happy you are backstage. I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, this is a simulated sport and you can have the grumpiest quarterback, but if he takes you to the Super Bowl, and also, by the way, WWE, newsflash for all the wrestlers out there. I know it's all about brand loyalty. It's not a team sport. Like, who cares what Punk's attitude is about being a leader in the back? in canon storyline. Like, of course it matters in real life. Like, that's what, I mean, that's always been a thing in pro wrestling, that the world champ is sort of like wears the C on his jersey backstage and represents. And I asked Hangman Page that after he won his first AW world title at the press conference. How do you feel? You're going to walk in the locker room. And he's like, I hadn't thought of that. So, I mean, maybe this generation has lost that feeling, or certain wrestlers have, but that was a big deal to Shawn Michaels when he first won the world title in the 90s. And, Bret Hart wanted to, represent in a way that, in a better way than Hogan did or whatever, be there more often. So, anyway, by the way, Bret Hart, I just put up today 30 years ago Raw reports that I wrote from 30 years ago on PWTorch. And I think the third out of 3 episodes that I posted is the one where Lawler had to leave the color commentary booth for some reason, and Bret filled in. This is a parenthetical, sorry. Bret filled in, and there was interference in the match. Like, people were coming to ringside. And I made note, and I've referenced this over the years multiple times for decades since. Bret looked at Vince, broke character, and goes, you just keep adding to the soup. Like, he broke character and acknowledged Vince when Vince was not in charge in canon, acknowledged he's the guy deciding who comes to ringside during these matches. And so that's all detailed. You can read my contemporaneous night of the show reaction to Bret looking at Vince, just an announcer, and calling him out for his booking of one thing after another coming to ringside and comparing it to adding ingredients to soup. And then Vince played into it. So there's fun stuff at PWTorch. Those 30 years ago reports on Raw and Nitro we put up are part of that. So anyway, it was a window into Bret's personality too. But back to locker room leadership. That was part of that first week's promo. And I was like, I don't know. It was a good segment in a lot of ways, but I, wrote about it and talked about it. I thought that it strayed off course in a way that I think bookers and wrestlers and promoters who are on social media all the time just feel an obligation to do. And I'd say color within the lines on the TV show and then do whatever you want, outside of it. And I think they've been coloring within the lines a little bit more of canon, as if this is a simulated sport and not some, social media one-upsmanship, and pull the curtain back and talk about the booking decisions and why are you on top when X, Y, Z you don't draw, or, you're not on the road enough to be deserving of the being booked to be champion. Like, weird stuff like that I just don't think works. I think they've been trying to recover from that ever since, and I think to a degree they have corrected course, Joshua, away from that stuff. But was there enough otherwise to work with when it's just, oh, Punk is old and he said he wants to bury Roman next to his dad and now the family's mad? I don't know. I mean, I think the vibe is there of this is a big deal, but I don't think people are super emotionally invested in the specifics of their back and forth.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this match is basically a vibes, because like some of the particulars of this promo this week, last week, they've all had like issues that would be disqualifying under other circumstances. But again, it's just the sheer star power and the almost palpable hatred. I don't know. I assume they actually don't hate each other, but they've done a pretty decent job of convincing in storyline that they genuinely don't like each other. I don't think anybody's looking forward to like a 5-star classic match at WrestleMania. But so, I mean, it's kind of hard to build to it in that sense. But it's still just like two larger than life personalities going at each other in the ring week after week, and then eventually meeting in a match that will probably still be very interesting and entertaining without the technical prowess of some of the undercard will probably have.
Yeah. And then what? Old CM Punk is still champ, or part-time Roman Reigns is champ. And I don't know if they're looking past that or have figured it out or know what to do. Yeah, right. I was going to say about and then you say all that, and it's like, yeah, maybe they don't like each other. And then Punk goes out there and goes, hey, it's our job. Just shit talk and try to sell tickets to people. And it's like, don't say that part out that is your job, but also what? Yeah. It's like when Stephanie was at a conference and retweeted that one of the co-founders of Twitter and was saying, what was his name? Biz Stone. I can't think of his name. And he's like, charity is a good way to market your brand. And it's like, no, charity should be done. You're supposed to say you do charity out of the goodness of your heart because you're so fortunate to be rich and making all this profit. Not it's a way to build your brand image. Like that stuff you keep in the conference room. You don't distribute that to the people. Like that's the quiet part that should stay behind doors with a bunch of other executives. So that's like when Pug's saying that crossed my mind. Like, no, don't say that on TV. At least not until after the fight. UFC does that all the time. The fighters hate each other and they hug and they laugh afterwards. But it's like you feel like a sucker, but you don't do it like 2 weeks before the fight. Were you gonna say? I couldn't tell if you were.
No, I was just giggling.
Gotcha. Well, so was Punk. All right, let's throw up more comments here. Derek Mitchell says CM Punk was running his mouth as usual and got those hands tonight much better than just them yapping. Mark Biscotti says, I like the latest installment of Reigns Punk. Jay added an old but fresh layer to the story. Reigns looks more vicious and realistic than anything Punk does. I worry the in-ring stuff is going to clash. I mean, in-ring stuff is not nothing. That is part of what the appeal is here. And Roman, does seem like he'd crush Punk physically. I don't know how much that matters. When you wonder how much are they really going at each other, Roman could just, stand up across from Punk and go, look at you. Am I supposed to be scared of you? Not since Shawn Michaels got beat up by like those male cheerleaders. Another quip, by the way, that I think Brett had on a little semi-shoot comment on Raw 30 years ago in my Raw reports over at PWTorch. Because an out-of-ring incident where Michaels got beat up by some regular people and it was super embarrassing for him. I don't know if that's where he lost a smile or part of the whole thing, but Roman could go places with Punk and all that, or he could, I don't know. There's places I could go that I won't right now that Punk is in my mind that Roman won't either, because it also could bounce back at him. But nevertheless, they are holding back. And none of it matters, as Punk said. All right. Swole says, I like all of it, but even Cole mentioned he Superman punched him from behind. Yes, and then 2 minutes later said Roman has proved he doesn't need his family. It's just incongruent.
Right. It seemed like him punching him from behind was like part of the storyline beat, but then Cole also just undercut it immediately. So
yeah. Yep.
I don't know what they're actually was like. Are we supposed to think that Roman sucker punched him? Or are we supposed to think that Roman just got the better of him because he's younger, faster, and proved he doesn't need his cousins?
Yep.
They didn't really highlight what you want us thinking coming out of that.
Either of those stories are fine. They cannot coexist. Exactly. Darrell says, too much of the Usos in there. I feel like it went more backwards. We should not be getting old bloodline feels because this won't last. This needs to be more one-on-one. I mean, I hear that, but do we want to see Roman and Punk one-on-one 7 out of 9 weeks or 5 out of 7 weeks leading into WrestleMania? I mean, what are they going to, what's left to do to bury each other in a way that makes you think less of both of them? I mean, I don't know.
Well, we'll find out next week, Wade. They will find a way.
Because there would be a way for Punk to go, Roman, I respect you. You got your way of doing business. I got mine. But what you did while I was gone is impressive. And I knew when I came back, part of what I wanted to do was beat you in the ring and bookend your legacy with mine and have the second part of my bookending be better than the first. He goes, frankly, when I was champ for a long time. But, I don't know if he should draw attention to the fact that he was never in a main event unless it was against John Cena or The Rock. But it was true. He was always secondary unless he was against one of those during that whole title reign on PLEs or pay-per-views. But, whatever. He can say in so many words, like, I respect the hell out of you. There's things you've said and done, of course, I don't agree with. Be super respectful. Just go, you are a legend, and I sort of want me coming back to be the story of this era, not you stopping me. And Roman can be like, Punk, there's so much, I don't want it to be a love fest, but like there's a lot, but you want it to be respectful and acknowledging about what the fans like about him. And Roman could just be like, Punk, you're what you did in that title reign, it inspired me wanting to beat it, and I did. And I'm proud of that. And I think that's part of why you want to beat me. There could have been a foundation early of mutual respect where fans felt good about cheering both of them. And then a line is crossed in some way in canon that then leads fans to go, wait, I thought we were going to get 2 of my favorites going at it. And hey, that's fine. See who's better. They've laid out why it's important for each of them to win, but they're doing so respectfully. And then some line gets crossed. There's a misunderstanding or something happens. And then people go, oh, there's an edge to it. But they just started with an edge tearing into each other. And so I don't know. I mean, it's not how, this isn't just 2020 hindsight. I mean, I felt this going into the first segment and when they were booking this match, do we really want to see face, especially if they're just going to tear each other apart? And that's what we're getting. So I don't know.
Especially given the amount of time they had to plan this. You're right. Starting with a kind of mutual respect and a building each other up I think would have, and then crossing the line. Yeah, that's a great idea. But you're right. They never went up. They just started going straight down, and they just
Yeah.
keep going down. And don't get me wrong, it's compelling, but I don't. It's not doing either one any favors.
Like, people are excited to see two of their favorites wrestle. Had one of their favorites tell the other, "You're a part timer and you're an asshole and you're mean to your family." And the other guy goes, "You're old. You're a hypocrite. Everything you say you stand for, you don't. You're thin skinned. You take selective photos and put them on social media that you're happy backstage, but you're just miserable and it's all an act." And everyone's like, "Ah." Like, whoa, this is a lot less fun than I thought it would be. But I don't know. It just, yeah, it feels like a message board fight from the 90s or 2000s, or a social media fight of modern era that you just want to leave. You don't want to hear anyone make their case. So one of them might be right, one might be wrong. I don't want to even read any more about this. It's just bringing me down, and it has a little bit of that come to life to it. Mark Biscotti points out the Punk laughing thing was a strange move. We talked about that. Adam Kidd says Punk has lost the last bit of coolness he had. I don't know, where are you on Punk's coolness, Joshua?
I think the best way to describe Punk's coolness is fading. I wouldn't say gone, but definitely fading. And it's been fading quickly, at least since he won the title. Maybe since he went to Saudi Arabia and apologized, and also the doing the thugonomics thing did not help his cool factor. Yeah, and then like Roman said, he's old. He looks old is part of the problem. Him actually being old isn't a problem, but him looking old and moving like, claymation is not helping him seem
Wow.
cooler.
Roman, you can borrow that line next week.
And the coolest thing about CM Punk at this point is probably his theme music and his wife. And I think that's probably the coolest things. He's still great on the mic, though. You can't take that away from him. Even when they're crossing lines and saying things that don't need to be said out loud, he's still always good and compelling at that. But yeah, it's hard to imagine a young person looking at CM Punk going, "Oh, that guy's cool." I mean, I feel like it's people my age who might think CM Punk's still cool, but there's no way anybody under like 30 is like, "That's a cool guy."
I know, and that is a story of so many companies when they peak, not doing the youth movement and using the top guys while they're still over and can still go to put over the new guys. And I mean, that's to Lesnar's credit, at least 2 weeks in a row. That's what he's been doing for Oba. That's what Becky is, well, Becky's not doing that for AJ. That's a little different, but nevertheless, there's some of that going around with others. All right. Let's see. Mark Biscotti says, as far as Punk not being cool, agreed, although he lost most of it when he lied down for the Cena pipe bomb. Cena took the cool factor down for a lot of people that he touched there for a while. Derek Mitchell says, you can't erase their ties. The bloodline made them famous, but I like the Usos defending their family. Are they just supposed to remain silent while Punk runs his mouth? I mean, I guess you could have Roman just saying, "Hey guys, I know you're mad. And I don't want to speak up. Let's deal with this after WrestleMania. I just want to focus." I mean, you and the Usos could go, "Sure, yeah, it's a world title match. We can wait a month." I mean, but what would pro wrestling be if everybody acted like reasonable adults? But you do want your baby faces to seem somewhere in the vicinity of reasonable adults most of the time.
Yeah, it is established that Jay's a hothead, though, and so
totally.
As a hothead, he will act. So he's whatever Jay Uso is, he's always kind of got his character down, and his reactions are usually in line with who we know him to be. And I appreciate that.
I find him compelling in that role too, by the way.
Yeah. Now, again, whether you're arguing that the Usos should be involved at all in this, sure, maybe they shouldn't just, let Punk talk about their dead uncle. But if you start from the idea that Punk shouldn't be mentioning Roman's dead dad at all, then you kind of would probably think that the Usos also should not be involved. But I understand that they're trying to fill space from when Roman's not there. And obviously they're going to want to pool on the bloodline story. But every time they do that, it kind of waters it down a little bit. Because it's a beloved storyline for a good reason. It was the creative height of the last few decades. And I get that they want to draw back on it, but I think they would be better off building new storylines and working from there.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, wink at the past, but you shouldn't be leaning on it or towards it.
Yeah. Yeah. Derek Mitchell says this is the fourth time we've seen some laughter after getting hit. Punk after the Usos hit him. Roman last week when Punk hit him, and Heyman getting hit by Rollins. That's right. And then Punk laughing after getting beat down. Mark Pasquetti goes, yeah, Derek, now that you point that out, holy shit, the booking team is getting lazy. I hadn't thought about how often that has happened, but it is sort of like this go-to moment, and they have like this short memory where they forget they did it already on the show and already in previous weeks.
Yeah, that's a weird thing. I don't like they called attention to it on the last one for Punk. I mean, it has happened repeatedly. I think this is the first time they called attention to it. Like it's supposed to be part of the story they're telling. But it is kind of weird when something like that should happen very rarely keeps happening repeatedly week after week.
Yeah. Dougie Doug says, I'm with you, Derek. I'm a casual fan. It seems like Punk is Hogan. He sucks the air out of the room. No cells. Old man energy. Tiresome dying dies. Shoot promos. Youth movement brought me back. Do they have a youth movement, Brady? A turnkey youth movement? Yeah, they kind of do. Trick Williams, Javon Evans, Oba Femi. Not that Ethan Page and Ricky Starks are super young, but I mean, there's some people in NXT you call up and freshen things up with guys in their 30s, as opposed to guys in their 40s arguing about who uses who uses hair dye and comparing yourself to a 52-year-old pitcher as some sort of defense. I don't know. It is a weird place we've gotten to this week.
Yeah, the youth is there. They're just bubbling under, and they always wait too long to pull the trigger on them, which is unfortunate. But yeah, and, Trick, Oba, and Javon are all super over right now. But, I mean, Oba at least has a huge match at WrestleMania with Brock Lesnar. That's great. They're doing something with him. They're going to do something. But right now, I'm not sure what they're doing with Trick. Sami Zayn, maybe. I mean, and Javon, God bless him, took almost 10 minutes to beat Grayson Waller. That's never a good sign. It was a great match, sure, but...
Well, let's not overstate.
I felt like I was watching Collision for a minute.
You think? Well, I quipped. I wouldn't say great. Let's say good match. I don't know if great match with Grayson Waller and Javon in under 10 minutes. Great.
Right, great. You're right. Great is at least an over exaggeration.
Yeah, there we go. Very good. But yeah, we'll get into that too. The in ring this week. Okay. Derek says, with all due respect, I don't care if Roman leaves and the Bloodline story was fumbled ever since Triple H has taken over, and actually look forward to what happens after Mania. I mean, maybe there's a lesson being learned right now, and it's like, yeah, after Mania, we got to flip to younger guys. Like, it's time. You know, this is us getting the last we could out of this, and we don't regret it. We're not admitting we're wrong, but we know there's some risk. But we are delaying the inevitable, and yeah, we're giving the minutes, we're giving the big spots to younger guys, or at least having a younger guy against an older guy, so that we can get some of that rub, and maybe that is coming afterwards. If so, that'll be a really interesting post WrestleMania season. I don't know if that'll happen. It's like when Penta's the young blood and he's 40-ish, and Gunther is the youngish blood and he's 39. I don't know.
39, not to mention MIA for about a month.
Yeah. So, I mean, my point is the youth movement is more guys in their 30s or even 40, but just haven't been on top forever. And so it might not just be about youth. It just could be about fresh faces on top being given that position of being a top act.
Right.
So much
LA Knight is not a
go.
young man, but he's still, the crowd loves him. And I think if they pushed him higher, that the crowd would accept that and approve of that. Even though he's not young, he's somebody that hasn't been at that level for an extremely long time. And, constantly main eventing WrestleMania. Like, what is this? Roman Reigns' 10th WrestleMania main event, roughly?
Yeah.
I'm not counting, but something like that.
Yep. All right. Chris Rucker says, it's wild to me how Punk can just say stuff and people swallow it. Last week, he said the only reason a 10-time Mania main eventer was in the main event was because of him. I mean, there are things Punk says, and if you're not a Punk fan, you're just like, wait, you're cheering that? Like, okay, all right. I guess he has a spell on you, or he has a lot of goodwill built up. And that can be one of them. I mean, he and AJ Lee are both very good at saying bold, self-congratulatory things about their careers.
Yeah, and as long as they believe it, it's not even a lie. They believe it.
Yep. Chris Rucker adds, this week he said nobody in their family could be world champ when Jay won the Rumble and the belt at Mania just last year. Yeah. Adam Kidd just says Jay was great tonight. Adam Kidd says that's when he is best, when he is angry and unhinged. Okay, super chat from Derek Mitchell. Just to let you know, since the World Heavyweight Championship was introduced in 2023, this will mark the first time it serves as a true main event of Night 2 at WrestleMania, featuring CM Punk and Roman Reigns. By the way, how much do you think the World Heavyweight Championship, that it's for that title and not the main WWE Championship that has more of a legacy tied all the way back?
Yeah, the sheer fact that this one is the one that has Roman and Punk, and it's going to be the actual main event, and it's got like the most juice, is an interesting thing. Because up until Roman won the Rumble, I think myself and most people consider it the lesser of the two world titles. And at this point, I would say that they are, at least after this Mania, I would say that they're basically on level footing, just in prestige level, just based on the heat of this particular match at that main event at a giant show that's known as WrestleMania, and not the night 1 main event, the night 2, the actual main event. So I think just putting it there and the fact that it's these two big stars fighting for it immediately buoys that title's prestige.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a non-factor while watching, but I think the absence of having a singular title with a legacy that Roman has that history with, that he's trying to regain, has limited some of the talking points that could have made this better. I don't think we're dwelling on it. I think there's just something is missing that could be there, and we don't know that it's missing, but if it was there, it would elevate it. That'd be a take on Derek.
Some backstory that they could be tying in that isn't available for this.
Yeah.
But it didn't even occur until that super chat. It didn't even really, I haven't even processed that on a mental level. I'm like, oh, it's the main event, so it's just a huge title. I almost forgot. Yeah. And I feel like the fact that it's the Raw title makes it a bigger deal now, especially with Raw on Netflix. Mm-hmm. During the Bloodline storyline, of course, SmackDown was the A show, regardless of what WWE told you. As it stands, it seems like they lean towards Raw being the A show at this point.
Yeah.
Which de facto makes that title closer to the A title, and that's part of the reason why it's definitely the main event.
We know Raw is seen by more people each week, and Netflix is the shiny new toy of distribution compared to cable, which is, diminishing over time. But we don't know how much more Raw is seen, because Netflix tallies people watching based on, if you watch for 5 minutes or 2 hours and 20 minutes, you're counted as a person. And the numbers we see for SmackDown, for instance, and for all cable ratings in the past, has been just simply how many people grand total are watching each minute, and then they average it. So when I always put in my ratings reports, like Raw averaged 1.2 million viewers. It didn't draw 1.2 million viewers. It drew 1.6 million viewers, but it averaged 1.2. But some people watch for 2 minutes, some watch for 20, some watch for 40, some watch for an hour 20, and they're not counted equally. Like, it's just how per minute how many people happen to be watching. It's not always the same 1.2 million people. Netflix, just to kind of dumb down, oversimplify in a broad brushstroke, they just, if you watch a little bit, you're one. If you watch 2 hours 20 minutes, you're also one. And so it inflates the difference between the two shows. I don't know if Michael Cole's thinking about that, or the wrestlers are thinking about it, or Roman, when he says the A show's thinking about it. There's more people watching on Netflix than, for a variety of reasons, than SmackDown, but it's not what it appears in terms of just the raw data if you don't look at how it's compiled differently.
It is crazy because, Netflix probably has more accurate viewing data than any wrestling show has ever had in the history of the world. I mean, Nielsen rating has always been mysterious to begin with, but based on some household and just extrapolated, whereas Netflix probably has the exact numbers, how many people watch what and for how long, and yet somehow we're even further in the darkness into how many people are actually watching this thing.
And to get a better number, ironically, we'd have to have Nielsen track Netflix the way that they do USA Network. And then what we would get is, apples to apples. And it never mattered to me, Raw and Nitro, they say 3 million and 3.4 million watched, but it's actually 3.2 million and 3.8 million. Okay. I don't know. I don't watch a show and think, well, now I think less of it because some abstract number that I can't imagine is a little bit different than the actual number. What matters is just how do they do relative to each other. So if you apply the same measurement system to Raw and Nitro, or to SmackDown and Raw and Dynamite and NXT, as long as it's the same system in tracking the same distribution method in the same way, relative to each other, we know We know that AW Dynamite beat NXT head to head. Didn't matter if the numbers were off 30% or 3% or 13%. They were off equally from one another. Like, they were treated the same way. So that it didn't matter to me. Like, oh, well, they're undercounting or overcounting. Who cares? I mean, it's close enough. And then also what matters is the trends. Where are they compared to a year ago? Have they had 6 out of 7 weeks where the viewership is down? That counted. Well, now Nielsen keeps refining their system. Last fall they changed things, and then early this year they radically changed how they measure wrestling compared to other shows. So there's no comparisons anymore. We can't compare Raw now to 4 years ago because they weren't on Netflix. We can't compare SmackDown on USA to SmackDown on Fox because they just lost a huge part of the audience. We can't compare NXT on USA to the CW because they're on a broadcast network now. There's nothing where you can compare and track anything. And so for me, who likes to track this and talk about it, takes away something for me. But even worse, how do wrestling promoters track whether they're doing a good job or not?
Yeah, I mean, they got the live crowd, thank God. Otherwise, they're just completely in the dark.
And that's what I was about to say, is how helpful is it when a live crowd is saying one more time or fight forever or you deserve it? Like, that's not helpful. That doesn't say if you're selling tickets. It just says the crowd that showed up wants to do communal chants that has nothing to do with an emotional investment in the story you're telling. I mean, but they see any reaction as a good reaction, and I go, I wouldn't. I think that I look at what they're doing with Randy and his heel promos, and there's an incongruence between the story they are clearly trying to tell and how the crowd is responding. So they have no reliable feedback on anything anymore. And I think it hurts their booking because they don't have week to week, month to month, year over year comparisons that are relevant anymore. So then it comes down to ticket sales. Like, oh wait, we can't say crowds are down, and that's a bad thing because we jacked up our prices, and maybe we're doing a better job than a year ago, but ticket prices are so high that attendance is down. There's no measurement left that anyone can with a straight face say isn't just selectively telling the story you want to tell with flawed data. That's where
they're making more money than ever. That's all we know. So I suppose they assume they're on the exact right path.
But they're the car salesman who is given a huge raise and a flat salary. But we don't know if he is trying to sell cars anymore because he has this guaranteed money coming in for the next 5 years, whether he sells cars or not. Guess what? He's going to be honest. Yeah, this Honda, you're better off with that Hyundai. Like, he has no incentive to sell a car if he just has a flat salary. Unless he's trying to think, well, way down the line, 4 years from now, I want to renegotiate, get a good deal. And there's a little bit of that with WWE in their TV deals, but that's not how human nature works. Oh, let me do a really good job now and go against my instincts and have a difficult conversation with somebody who I like about not pushing them anymore, and be honest with myself about some booking that I've done that now I have to admit was wrong. No human is going to do that without some incentive. And if that incentive is 3.5 years from now when they start renegotiating a new contract, they're not going to make those changes internally. They're not going to admit fault. So it's tough. It's not great. All right. Back to the chat. Adam Kidd says, Punk is nothing if he's not a hypocrite at times. Yeah.
It's kind of built in at this point.
Yeah. But it didn't have to be. I'd be protecting Punk, not calling it out on national TV. Real Legend says, I'll laugh if Cody and Randy becomes the night 2 main event instead. LOL. I don't think that's going to happen. But equal time here. JC Scooby goes, Roman is a tool bag.
Roman is essentially the same heel character he's always been. So if you hated Roman in the bloodline, you should still hate him. But guess what? You don't. You love him. So hard to say.
It's about who's more cool, who's more badass, that's
Roman is more cool and more badass. And if those are your two metrics, then Roman.
And I think it is most people's
more
metrics.
Of the crowd, and he does have more of the crowd. That actually tracks.
Yeah, and I think with Orton, that he's more cool and badass than Cody at the moment. We'll see how Cody does, and it's a Pat McAfee exclusive when he.
Right. That's where you go to build the real storylines. Thunderdome with Pat McAfee. That's where you come back from a major angle.
That's what people want to hear watching television is you have to listen to some podcast schlub. I shouldn't, whatever. You have to tune into a podcast to have this exclusive. The fascination by WWE with Pat McAfee, and I know he has a big platform, but it's like they fawned over, oh my God, ESPN, and oh my God, we're on Netflix. It's like they're so, the term new money versus old money, the old money looks at the new money shows up and they're driving the really expensive car and they have, bejeweled door handles, and the old money's like, no, low key, act like you've been here before. WWE is so new money with everything, and it's embarrassing. Anyway.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong.
Yeah. All right, Adam Kidd says the match is not going to be good. I mean, it'll tell a story, but
It
I
will
mean,
be probably entertaining, but it
yeah,
will not be an athletic masterpiece by any stretch of any imagination.
yeah, yeah. Rye, let's see, Rye 12211 says WrestleMania is about the spectacle, and I think all of this is going to create a memorable moment at Mania when the bell rings, and we know it's all about WWE moments. That could be read straight or sarcastic by different people, but it's also just true, Joshua. I mean, it is about the spectacle in the moment, and it's gonna feel big, even if you think less of them. You still kind of want to see it. I think that's what WWE's just hoping is the case, and counting on being the case.
Yeah, and they're probably right. That probably is the case. If WrestleMania was this weekend, even after tonight's segment, I think they would go out there and it would be like the crowd would be like in awe when they stand across from each other in the bell ring to just have a big match feel, and it will, unless they really kill it. And they have a ways to go if they want to really kill it, even though they haven't been building it up exactly. They're not. It's still going to be giant when it happens.
It would be nice, and it's just not Cole Strength, and it's not Court Graves color commentary character, for lack of a better term. But it'd be nice to have somebody just going, for all that these two are saying about each other, let's not lose sight. And Cole can't do it without sounding, if he tried, it would sound like he's just heavy-handedly trying to sell you something. It's one of his weaknesses. There isn't that sort of just genuine fireside chat vibe that Jim Ross had that Cole doesn't. Where, it just goes, you know what? These two are tearing each other apart. And, frankly, it's, they're pointing out each other's weaknesses. Nobody's perfect, but these are two really, really, really big stars, and they can still go in the ring. And as Punk pointed out tonight, there's some younger guys who are coming after him who have come up short. And nobody can point to Roman's win-loss record and say he's anything but still at his peak. This is that's the story they can tell on the air. Though nobody is, these are the two big, there might be a video package with some narrator voice who says it, but you want somebody you're spend time with week to week to kind of point out when they're done tearing each other down, and you're keeping score of who has the best social media troll line. Let's remember, these are two big stars. You love pro wrestling. These are the two biggest stars of this era, or two of them. I mean, I don't know if you wanted to mean Cody in that context, or Brock Lesnar, or whoever, but there's a way to do this, but there's no voice saying that either in the midst of all this. Just some mature person who's dispassionate, stepping back objectively, just going, hey, when they're done tearing each other apart verbally, let's keep in mind, this is one of the biggest matches in years, because this is not a retirement tour. It's not a true part-timer, like a special attraction like The Rock coming back. Roman is around. He's not around all the time. Punk is around a lot, but he was gone for a long time. But they have gas in the tank, and they're good. Just have somebody telling that side of this, and they're not yet.
Right. They're Punk. All you're getting is Punk is old and Roman's not there. But even though you and I and the chat know that it's not going to be great in the ring, they should be telling us that they're both at the top of their game, and it's going to be at least a chess match, and a great whoever wins will be the greatest. But they haven't even mentioned that. When in the last year, do you imagine between the two of them that they've taken 5 pins between the two of them? I assume that's over under 5 is my guess.
Yeah.
They're not losing matches. In canon, they are both constantly winning matches. Punk is the world champion. Reigns won the Royal Rumble. Have they mentioned that Reigns won the Royal Rumble since he challenged Punk? I mean, I think that's supposed to be an accomplishment.
Right. They should absolutely frame it that way. I mean, the last year or two of programming has been John Cena, Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and CM Punk, and maybe I left somebody out, all just tearing into each other in a kind of shoot-like fashion, diminishing everybody's star power. I mean, Drew seems less scathed than Punk and Cody, and I don't know, Cena kind of came away unscathed because people are kind of scared to say the wrong thing about him because he just kind of had that clout. But I mean, WWE's built not on a heel face matchup with a heel who has traits that are easy to tear apart, hypocrisy, assholeness, and a baby face who stands for something and is what he says is aligned with the truth, and he fights in a way that people like and respect. That's not the story WWE's telling at the top. And maybe that has something to do with not selling as many tickets and not having that sort of just electricity of that, as I call it, the peak fan experience that you got with Sammy in Montreal or Cody in the Journey. And they didn't do that well with Cena last year. They were, all over the place on that. So I'd find a way to get back to that. But at the core, you have to have people in that writing room who believe in that's a thing. And I think it's revealing. I think there's a sort of no. I mean, I don't think Paul Levesque looks at the world and says, oh, there's good guys and bad guys. I think he and TKO executives think there's savvy people who take from others and keep it in large quantities. And then there's other people who are suckers and are lesser people for them because they don't have as nice of a car or as many houses. And I just think there's a sort of attitude in the culture of that company behind the scenes that is leaking onto TV more than most rich, successful businessmen have ever done before. Usually, rich, successful businessmen know how you market a product is making people feel proud to be represented by your brand. Car companies don't sell cars based on the features of the car or how you like it. Car companies sell their cars based on how they think people will look at them when they're driving it. It's what will it say about me when other people see me driving this car, walking up to in the parking lot, parking it in my driveway. And WWE, that's not what they're doing. I mean, they need some advertising executives come in and just assess what do fans really want. And if they gauge it based on social media trolls and ephemeral, meaningless, views on Instagram, I mean, that's even worse than all the other things we said about ratings in terms of deciding whether you had a successful week or not. All right.
Yeah, it's like somebody said in the chat a minute ago, they're booking towards moments. They don't care if that moment is between a heel and a face. It's like they can't even imagine the idea of somebody being a good person and trying to do the right thing and overcome a bad person. All I can imagine is two people saying bad things about each other that gets watches on YouTube and TikTok or whatever.
Precisely. Everybody else are suckers. And I mean, it's just, yeah. Cavanti Small says, it seems this feud is built on old versus part-timer. Yeah. Speaking of TKO, by the way, this is just chronological here. It's not really on topic. WWE announced today, or they announced on Raw, that they're selling a limited number of seats on the stage. And by the way, that's going to be a great memory for some people. I don't want to diss on it too bad, but it's part of the pattern of, is there another corner of the ring that we can plaster a logo onto? Is there another commercial break we can add to a PLE to ruin your experience on a 4 or 5 match PLE show when they used to be 7 or 8 matches and a lot tighter? Everything about TKO is just, can we raise ticket prices even more? And will people buy them at any price? Let's take advantage of that built-in goodwill that we built up for years before this. It just has that vibe. And so I quipped, and Dougie Doug says, I laughed at this line from your recap, Wade, on PWTorch. Next, TKO is going to sell tickets to sit on the laps of the announcers. I mean, is there anything left they won't do, Joshua, to make a little bit more money at the expense of dignity and the larger fan experience?
I think you're underestimating what they can find to make money off of. Dominic Mysterio apparently recently is one of the few people allowed to have a company on his gear, the very well-known and respected Dude Wipes brand, the prestige of that all over his gear. I mean, I think that's the beginning. I think that's going to be everybody in the future. Yeah. And maybe I was misunderstanding what they were saying. Are they selling people the opportunity also to have their names printed on the mat at WrestleMania or on the canvas or something like that?
I didn't pick up on that. I won't rule it out. I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, there was something about that probably in the same spot where you can sit on the stage. And you're not wrong. That's whoever buys that seat, whoever I assume sells both kidneys to sit in that seat, good for them. But it's not doing anything for me, and it's not doing anything for millions of people that watch the show. I don't know. And yes, the advertising is out of control, but I do think, I was talking to a buddy of mine, they wasted no time getting the F5 shirt out immediately. They printed that before Paul Heyman put the microphone down last week.
Yep, absolutely. I'll do my little Target rant too. I just a short one. Target used to walk in. Not everybody sees every one of my shows, so I'm going to underline this. Used to walk into Target it's not Walmart. It's it's red, it's green, the lighting is good, the walls are Walmart painted their walls the color of the sky when it makes you sad. And why would you do that when you could pick any paint color? And Target's bright red and white and shiny, and the shelves are stocked, and you walk in, and where the shopping carts are, you look at the store, And now you walk into Target, and I said, you're tripping over a dollar store rack that's getting in the way of you getting your shopping cart around the bend to then try to get past all the other clutter in the middle of the aisle. And then you get to the section where there used to be things, and it's empty, and it's not front face because they don't have the workers anymore. And then when you first walk in, you look to the right, it's this, there should be a curtain up, but you're looking at them filling all the boxes of people who are picking stuff up that they ordered online. And that used to be nice looking to the right. So now you got a dollar store in front of you and this cluster of just ugly boxes, and it's not a pleasant experience. And Target didn't realize their special sauce, and that's a term used in like business journals on them. They're a local company, so we talk about this in Minnesota a lot. Their special sauce was, we're not trying to get you to buy a 99-cent piece of plastic made in overseas for your kid when you first walk in to get a little extra. Yes, there's some suggestive stuff in line when you're going through checkout, but we're not in your face about it. We have dignity, and you can kind of feel it's like a fun experience. They said it's like a 30, 40-year-old's Friday night out was going to Target. And then some guy comes in with no idea about the culture, looks around and goes, the equivalent of, why don't we sell advertising on the canvas? And why don't we put a bunch of ads on pay-per-views? Why hadn't anyone thought of that? Because that's not the experience your customers have come to expect from you, because they want to feel like you're not just looking at every little nook and cranny to make a little money because of the short-term goal of quarterly statements or a little extra profit. And what I'm saying to that world sounds like a sucker who doesn't understand business. And I'm like, how many freaking yachts and houses and vacations and cars do you need to make you happy before you can just have some freaking pride in your product being pleasant for your customer base? And WWE is wondering why they're losing some of that. And they are, just like Target is. It's a brand that has lost or is losing that connection with the fan base that said, we're not just in it for the money. We believe in what we're doing, and we know we'll make enough money if we keep you feeling good about your experience. And we're thinking long term. And they're not doing that. And the Kill Tony stuff where he's like, Puerto Rico's a dumpster fire, whatever he said. And it was based on, bad information on something Biden did, which he did not just in Puerto Rico. It was one warehouse in Puerto Rico, and it was part of an initiative where there were like 60 things done in the United States all over the place. And the right-wing media isolated it as something about Puerto Rico. When he bought into it, told the joke, it died. Then he has to walk around Damian Priest in WWE, and he gets boosted up by WWE. All this stuff chips away at how people feel about the brand, because it's a bunch of, far right-wing bros telling jokes that they laugh at when they're going out to their $300 dinners, losing touch with their fan base. All right.
Kind of related to WWE, actually. In Target, the welcoming environment and the kind of slightly upper class version of a store like that.
Yep.
That was why you were willing to go there and pay more for the same product that you can get at Walmart, because you're essentially buying goodwill and a good experience at that point.
Yep.
And not unlike WWE, prices are going up, but also we're advertising more to you. So enjoy that.
Exactly. Yeah. People are like, well, Walmart's no better than Target when it comes to X, Y, and Z. Well, right. But you save instead of $100, you're paying $72. So if you're not going to give me a better experience, I'm not going to pay more. But, it's nice to feel good when you're done with whatever you choose to do with your time. Go to WWE show or go to Target. Some people don't care. They're like, and there's stores for that, and there's products for that. But WWE is trying to sell a first-class experience, but they're doing so in a way that is I think, losing a connection with their audience that they are not fully calibrating yet. Or maybe it's starting to click. And they have no metrics. No metrics that are reliable to measure what's actually happening. Yeah. All right. Back to chat, and then we'll move on, even though we've had some fun sidebars. So it's not just all Roman Punk here. Hopefully fun sidebars. Or depressing sidebars. I don't know. We'll get into the other topics on this show in the next segment here. But a few more chat comments here. Only Isaac says, some solid build and also some very bizarre moments. Dead air. Weird. I think one of the things they put Punk in a position to do tonight, and it struck me, is not look like he is trying to act confident and sure-footed when he is not. And I think that hurts the Punk brand. When he goes, hey, am I old? And the crowd starts chanting, you're old, you're old. And it's like, okay, Punk's got to calibrate on the spot. Wait, is that what I was looking for? It was open. And then they do the yes chant. Was he open? They'd say no? Or are they saying yes, but endearingly? Or are they saying yes antagonistically. And he has to calibrate all of this because the whole story is a compelling mess. And so Punk's brand is, I got the crowd in the palm of my hands, and I got a line for I can have a comeback for anything, and I got something in my holster that nobody has a bulletproof vest for. That's his character, and he's being put out there now looking less sure because there are some dead moments and some dead air that's weird, as Isaac pointed out. Joshua.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, what answer do you think he was expecting when he asked that?
I know.
Because, yes, he's old. That's a known fact, and he admitted to it right after that. Mm-hmm. So was he expecting them to say no so he could argue with them? Because that is completely insane. So he should have been expecting yes and had a better follow-up ready.
It's like when Swerve said, "Did you miss me? Did you miss me, sickos?" It's like, you just turned heel. Stop doing a babyface line.
Right? Did he think that was going to get boos?
Right?
Is that what he thought? No.
Yeah.
No, it's just not paying attention to the moment. Yeah. And like this was either not being prepared well, or maybe he was just he almost certainly doesn't have a promo written out. This is CM Punk. He can cut it. Maybe he just threw in the "Am I old?" line and not thinking of how it would come back, because it did kind of like stall the momentum of the promo. And it was, as the guys said, it was dead and weird, and it did not make him appear like, if nothing else, you should make him always appear confident, because he is. That's his character. He's always confident. He's always right, even when he's wrong. He thinks he's right still, and they made him look like kind of like he's second guessing himself out there.
And even if you're a more discerning consumer of Punk's promos than the people in the crowd cheering for him, you respected the fact that he had a following where the crowd was cheering for him and following him, and they put him in a position where that's getting, disintegrating before our very eyes week after week. Goodfella says, "I'm actually becoming less interested in this feud. I was totally pumped for it pre-promos. Cody Randy night 2 might be my call as of tonight. I'm more interested in the bloodline interactions." JC Scooby says, "Think Punk and Rowan realize that writers and bookers don't know what they're doing and they're winging it to get to Mania?" I mean, if they're winging it, maybe they should lean on the writers more. But I don't know that I want to choose between those two things right now.
Yeah, but also this build doesn't seem like some kind of master plan that's coming together right now either. So it's really hard to say.
And there's nothing after. They're not talking about afterwards either. Like,
they're not talking about. They hate each other. One's old, and the other is an asshole. That's kind of the story. But the actual stakes of the match have been touched on just barely on the surface level, and the aftermath is should be a big deal. And part of what they're talking about is, how are you going to accept it when I beat you, so forth? What are you going to do? Kind of stuff.
And like, they're not talking about if, like, I just, I go back to, like, Nick Bockwinkel was a top heel in the AWA when I was a kid, and the Sheik and NL Casey was coming in, and the stakes were, Nick's a heel, you've booed him all the time, but you got to rally behind him and Bobby Heenan now, believe it or not, because if the Sheik wins the AWA title, he's taking it back to the Middle East. He's going to take the title with him, so we can live to fight another day, and baby faces will line up and take Nick down. But right now we got to rally behind Nick. Like, the stakes were high, and as a kid, I'm like, oh my God, I hate Nick, but he's got to win, and I don't want to see Bobby Heenan happy, but we can't let the Sheik take the title back to the Middle East. We'll never see it again. He and his harem will just, So that was a story, and, like, you want stakes, and they're not talking about what happens in May and June and July if Punk wins compared to if Roman wins. And it doesn't seem to have crossed their mind that that's like a selling point to talk about the stakes. And maybe it's deliberate, or maybe it hasn't crossed their mind because they're just so focused on the two alpha males going at it and some, trolly social media message board insult of the, zinger troll job scorecard instead.
I get the feeling they think that this is going very well. And as we've noted, it is compelling, but whether or not it's beneficial for the match, and especially the aftermath of the match, it almost certainly is not. But I get the feeling that everybody involved thinks this is going very well, and they're making great television.
I can't rule that out. I'm not convinced that's true, because there does seem to be a little bit of flailing and desperation, or what are we going to talk about this week, and can we make this work? And then they're like, I think we did it. I think there's some of that maybe, but they also might be in that target corporate bubble of, hey, look, we made an extra few dollars off of our little mini dollar store that crowds the entryway to Target. And they're not, but foot traffic is way down in their stores overall. And they're like, yeah, but at least for people who came, they spent more on these trinkets than they did 2 years ago when no one was smart enough to crowd the entryway by the shopping carts, a bunch of these tacky looking shelves with tacky looking cheap products. They just go, well, but per person, well, yeah, but your traffic is down, way down, and stock price is way down. WWE can look and go, oh, and my point in this is, oh, look what it did on Instagram. Look at the views. Look at the retweets. Look at the stuff I looked at on my phone when I was on the Uber and at the airport. Oh my God, we've created buzz. This ephemeral, largely meaningless social media metric that just simply rewards the most controversial loudmouth thing without any eye in what it means later. It is the pro wrestling storytelling feedback version of snacking at night on a bag of chips and Twinkies. It tastes good in the moment, and then there's a hangover 20 minutes later. I love Totino's party pizzas. They were delicious, and they smelled great. And then a half hour later, the smell lingered in the kitchen. I'm like, I'm never eating that again. That is gross. And then you had a stomachache. Like, everything is about how does the sugar rush of that moment in the social media buzz, and they're not thinking about what does it do to our brand and the image of the wrestlers. Or I'm wrong and they're right, and that's what society has broken down into. But I'm not conceding that. I think there is a peak fan experience. It's a lot closer to Sammy in Montreal and Cody's journey, completing a story. I still think there's contemporary examples of what works better.
Yeah, just because they're making more money than ever doesn't mean the product is better. Like, we're still watching the product, and in instances like this, it is less confident and not as just good. And it just like seems like myself and a lot of people are just like not emotionally invested at all in the product. We're just watching it kind of at a distance, and maybe that's what they think is happening. That's why they think as long as people are talking about it on social media, then it's killing.
I know that's the thing. When you say they think it's doing well, they might, but is it based on metrics that are ephemeral and meaningless but make them feel good about themselves for one night's sleep or one plane ride? And then you have the Tiffany Stratton segment, I mean, again, it's symptomatic of the mindset. And I've seen worse. And I mean, I could create, if I'm the defense attorney, I could defend it. But her to say, yeah, NXT built me from the ground up and taught me how to be my true self, but amped up. And it's like, why are we pulling there's only 1,700 seats available in St. Louis, and you sold 1,500 of them. Like, why are you dedicating commercial time on Raw to pushing Stand and Deliver like you're desperate to sell tickets because it's dying? And then you're giving us like Shawn Michaels narrated videos about the NXT brand and in the inside story on Tiffany going, I was nothing until NXT taught me how to be a WWE superstar. I mean, I don't know what that's about.
How are we supposed to feel about Tiffany based on that? She just told us that she's playing a character that's kind of like herself, but amped up. And also her character is awful. So, I mean, what are we supposed to take from that? That seemed like an outtake of Unreal, just plugged right into the middle of the show.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Vince McMahon would say, I look at wrestlers and I try to find something about them that's marketable. And then we focus on that, exclude other things, and amp it up. But he didn't say that on TV. He said it to me when I interviewed him. He would say it, on a rare interview or on a DVD production outside of canon, looking back years ago with this wrestler, not right now. Here's someone you should pay to see. And now the Paul of eccentric vision of, let me teach Trick Williams how to do his ring entrance and let's put it on social media. It's so much of this is about that it's just always been there. And I always kind of try to preface by going, he wouldn't be the star he was if he didn't have this insatiable ego that needed to be fed and just constant reassurance and validation that, he's a public figure that people are thinking about. And it's, whatever. I mean, people choose how they're going to decide their success in life and measure things. But his, I need to put a video out showing how Trick Williams be Trick Williams. And now we need to put videos on Raw that shows Tiffany Stratton isn't an authentic character. She's been created from the ground up. I mean, I don't know. It was weird. The NXT push tonight was weird. I mean, they're not trying to sell out 16,000 seats. They're trying to sell a few hundred extra seats, and they're pushing it like Stand and Deliver, like they're going to have this embarrassingly small crowd. It's like, it's going to look full. It's just a really small venue. So I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, I don't know what it's a weird NXT push. And they told it like this is the biggest show NXT puts all year. They're telling the viewers also like, not only if you're in town, go see it, but also if you don't normally watch NXT, still watch this because it's the biggest show. It's the WrestleMania of NXT. They didn't say that, but that's what they were implying. And I will maybe watch it. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the way to promote a wrestling product is having a title that matters or stakes that people relate to in a system, in an ecosystem that's consistently presented in a way where it rewards success and punishes cheating. So people who are on top seem like they belong there, or you resent the fact that they got away with something and you're hoping that's corrected and you think the system will correct it. This is not a comment on the American political system at the moment, although it could be. And you're watching because there are stars who are not accessible to you and are living this grand life because of some special skills that they have and a personality that's authentically who they are that make them a star. And WWE isn't doing any of that. You know, I mean, certainly not NXT. NXT is all about, look at what Triple H and Shawn Michaels and our team are building from the ground up. Oh, she had some gymnastic ability. Now we turned her into a main roster star. And it's like, save it for the boardroom blank sessions with all your people, your circle sessions, and keep it off our TV. Let the fans look at these people with some, as Mickey James once told Pat Meanell on a PWTorch Daily Cast, we are becoming much too accessible to our fans, much too familiar with our fans. And I know that sounds weird. People are on social media and see every movie star showing everything about their lives every day. But there's something about tuning into a show and thinking these people are TV stars and they don't give me a window into every aspect of their life that is contradictory to what I see on TV. And, you know.
Right. You want to buy in that the person you're watching on TV, the character, is that actual person. And if they're constantly on social media and or talking to you or in the middle of the show contradicting that, then it's hurting your immersion, which is not helping your enjoyment of the product.
And then I think there's people like Steve Austin who don't want to seem behind the times. So they watch WWE Unreal and go, well, I mean, I'm kind of against it conceptually, but it's really, these people are really entertaining. Well, right, Rhea Ripley's really entertaining when she's acting insecure with no makeup on. But that's all I think about when she comes out now is without her makeup on, she's backstage fretting over whether she can portray herself as a confident person because that's not who she is and she has imposter syndrome. Why did that have to be introduced to me? You can make a lot of money with Rhea Ripley if you don't introduce to me on WWE Unreal or all these other places that they do it, that she is just this regular person who doesn't feel like she actually is going to go in the ring and not just collapse in insecurity before our very eyes. And I reported on it. That was her reputation when she first got called up from NXT. It was overwhelming her. And that is still a thing. I just don't think that's like, it's real. It's true. We don't need to know. I don't need to know what
cool to see that like 10 years down the line. Oh, she was like that behind the scenes.
Yes.
On the screen, she was a powerful, dominant person. That's how she portrayed herself. Like, I don't want to know in the moment that this is how they're actually feeling behind the scenes. That's, again, it hurts what I'm watching to know what's happening behind it. That's why, like, you can watch a movie and you can watch it behind the scenes after the movie. Be like, oh, that's cool. That's how they did that. That's why this was this way. And that can be interesting and people can enjoy that. And it can be very entertaining. It can be as good or better than the movie you watched. But it's not going to do you any favors to cut in the middle of the movie and show how the actors were feeling about a scene right before you watch that scene.
Yeah. I mean, I don't need the director telling me or the producer or the cameraman in the middle of watching HBO series or Netflix series, oh, let's tell you about how the sex scene was really filmed and how nobody was really feeling anything. Like, no, I don't need to know that when I'm, immersed in this relationship and the passion. That you don't interrupt in the middle of it or right after it's over and tell me that. And WWE can't wait to show you how the stars of the show are the people in Gorilla, are the people in the writing room. And I mean, I would, it might be better for the WWE product. Paul Levesque put wrestling trunks back on and got back in the ring and didn't have a booking job, because at least he'd just make it about himself, the wrestler, instead of the whole culture of the presentation now being about him and his job as booker and in the boardroom. All right. Stephen Franzi says, I thought Punk was laughing because the crowd was chanting one more time. Maybe he's laughing at everything falling apart. But
right, like he shouldn't be laughing at that. That should be like, oh, this is not getting over. They should not be chanting one more time. Also, one more time what? There's only the one announced us. They can't put him through it again.
Well, they have empowered the fans to think it's all about them. It's all about pleasing you. It's not you're watching something cool. and react to it. It's, have we entertained you? It's time to do your chant, Roman Reigns, whatever. Cal Fassel says, Punk might not be using just for men for his beard, but he definitely is for his hair. I know beards go gray before hair, but yeah, he might be. Derek Mitchell says, if you're not sold on Punk against Roman at this point, I don't know what to tell you. Real Legend says, I think the story is Punk got into his head by having Jay give Roman orders. What order did Jay give Roman?
I don't know. I think Jay was kind of telling Roman, like, hey, we got to take care of this guy. And Jay did distract Punk so Roman could hit him from behind, but I didn't take that as Jay giving an order of any kind.
Yeah, I mean, Jay was just saying, Punk's talking shit about the family. And we can't let it go. That's true. I don't know if that's giving orders as much as saying what our motivation should be, why we should be angry. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, if that's the story, I don't think that it's coming through. Swole says the just for men line was the best line. Internet intentional rounding says, Wade, you must have been writhing in pain as much as Punk when the crowd is chanting one more time for a babyface to be powerbombed again. I mean, I guess if it was a heel doing it, it'd be worse, like Orton, Cody. But yeah, that's not great. Kyle Fassel just goes, I think Roman and Punk peaked at their first interaction. All right, so bunch more. Oh, we got some more super chats. I better prioritize those since I say I will. And I know the chat's been going crazy since we've been talking here, and I haven't kept up on it. So I'll try to catch up and keep an eye on that and save some stuff for later. But I really do want to get to other things. Although
we've already covered one segment. We're doing really good.
yes, and a couple of video packages like the Tiffany thing and the NXT ads. Swole says Target actually is a great crossover, meaning a topic. It's a analogy to what's going on with WWE. Hopefully I wouldn't spend time on it if I didn't believe that also, but I'm glad you're backing that up. Rude Dog says, breaking news, Target will be on the ring apron of WrestleMania. Just kidding. Let's see. Tommy McLaughlin, 80s Wrestling says, AEW seems more liberal and they don't price their fans out. I mean, if they could, they might. Still, but
right, they don't have the option of doing that.
Yeah.
Although, as an anecdotal thing, WWE is going to be here in a couple months, and then AEW is going to be an hour north and an hour south of me. And I decided to go to both AEW shows because it's going to cost me still like a quarter of the amount it would to go to the one WWE show.
Yeah.
Maybe my wife will give me tickets to WWE. I can do all three. That'd be great, but we'll see how that shakes out.
Yep. David Coleman says ESPN being involved hurts the product. Well, yeah, because people couldn't figure out how to authorize this ESPN Plus, which is different than ESPN whatever that you're also paying for. And if you don't pay for it twice, but if you are, thank you, but you shouldn't. And here's a 4-step process that may or may not work with your cable company to get Plus that you already. I mean, it was a mess.
Right. Luckily, I already had it because I don't know if I would have went out and got it if I didn't happen to already have it bundled in with my Disney garbage.
Yeah. Comment from Fan Blast Deco is a lot of greed to go around and not much self-reflection. Yeah. If ticket sales continue to falter, they're going to look for heads to chop.
Right. They will admit no wrongdoing, but they will find somebody to take the blame.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. Jimbo says, I see we're selective with what super chats are read. Good to know. I guess what I wrote was too positive and doesn't fit with the show's narrative. Jimbo, we just were long-winded talking about stuff that came before your chat. I'm just looking at the super chats now. I was locked in. Like, I shouldn't be too hard on Jimbo. I mean, he's frustrated and he's wrong in his framing of it, and I have a right. I'm going to tell him that it has nothing to do with that. But when I'm reading chat comments, I'm not seeing the new ones. I have the ones on my screen, and I'm reading them in order. And it just took us a little longer to get through them because I talked about Target for a few minutes. But now we're catching up on super chat. So here is Jimbo 0617. I think I got that right. I'm genuinely puzzled by the complaints of this year's Mania card and build. Looking at last year's card, this year's card is way more interesting. Phoenix El Grande, Orton Henry, New Day Viking was all filler. So I have not put time into the undercard because it's just starting to fill out. It's just last week we're kind of going, oh, okay. I think we can kind of see where they're landing.
There's filler to be added still.
Yeah. And filler has sort of a pejorative sound to it, but You need you got to fill 2 nights with 3.5 hours, give or take, of content. And Jimbo isn't wrong or right. It's just premature to criticize someone for not acknowledging it because they just haven't filled it all out yet. I think Jimbo's selecting the things that he felt were least consequential from a fully rounded out 2-night experience. And WWE has not given us that full lineup yet for us to assess. And we have several weeks left of build for them to perhaps make it ruin things that you like or people are looking forward to, or build on things. And a lot, I do think in fairness to WWE, I think that there's some things that they want, and this is the first time I've said it, but there are things, Joshua, that they are doing at a pace where their frustration is, people relax. We got 6 weeks to go. We got 5 weeks to go. We've got 3 weeks to go. Chill out. We don't want to just do that WrestleMania season or the last 3 weeks. Everyone's like, you're just repeating yourself. We can't wait till the day after Mania. There are storylines that are going to come together in these last few weeks so that TV feels newsworthy and relevant and the matches feel fresh. So it's too soon to declare the filler better or worse than next year's WrestleMania. But that's just because WWE's deliberately and wisely not just revealing the full lineup 6-7 weeks beforehand.
Right. And while we are criticizing the build from tonight, I think we're also saying Roman and Punk is still a huge match. Just like last year, Cody and Cena was an awful match, horrible finish, hated it. But they built it up like it was a big, big match, which it was, just like this one will be.
I muted myself instead of unmuting. There is a chance that when this full lineup comes together, we'll be like, well, that Roman Punk thing is kind of a mess for me. There's some positive because it feels like a spectacle and I got to see it, even if there's some downside to what's left in the day after, in the weeks afterwards. And we can, but people might really be interested in it. But we also might look at this lineup and go, you know what? Paul Levesque had his act together when it came to filling out that undercard. He had some good long-term plans and called some good audibles, had to deal with some injuries. And this is going to be a good 2-night experience, even if we got some doubts about how Orton Cody was handled or how, and by the way, I was praising the Rhea Jade thing on Friday last weekend. I thought that was, strong heel and a strong baby face, and it worked in a way that the crowd reaction was not incongruent and inconsistent with what they were going for, like with Randy and Cody. So there's some things that might actually sneak up on people who are focused like we are on the show, because Raw ended with it for a reason. They built around it for a reason. It's the selling point. But this could turn out, as Jimbo says, and thank you generally, Jimbo, for the super chat. I mean, I'm being playfully and seriously combative a little bit with your impatience and framing of things. I have no issue with you being positive and putting that out there. There's no agenda here other than us just freestyling our thoughts on the top segment with the two top stars of this generation who we think are, as we've said for last hour plus, there's some good, but there's also some things that are questionable. Joshua, I think this card could still turn out to be like a really well-received 2-night entertainment event.
Right. No, I am very much looking forward. I mean, it doesn't feel as hot as like WrestleMania season usually has kind of like this kind of vibe to it. It feels a little subdued, like even Cody like called it a sleeper mania or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I could see that, but I think he might also be right. Like you said, Jade and Rhea has been better than I would have guessed, especially given their social media tizzy that started the whole thing off. And even like my favorite match from last year's WrestleMania was the women's 3-way, but you might remember that was built horribly. They had all 3 women, Io, Rhea, and Bianca, looking stupid and irritating, but they still went out and put on one of the best matches of the year. Mm-hmm. So like this could still easily be a very good WrestleMania, even if we have some definite qualms with builds, particularly in the, more main event matches.
Yep. So let's give them time before it's like, jury instructions. Don't think about guilt or innocence. Just think what's credible, what testimony is credible. Gather it all. Don't talk amongst yourselves. We're not a jury, so we don't. But there's a little bit of there's something to that, which is don't feel like discuss amongst yourselves, guilty or innocent, until all the evidence is in, because you can kind of end up digging your heels in a little bit or focusing on things that haven't been fully fleshed out. I do feel a little bit that way about the WrestleMania undercard. I mean, I think let's have that discussion in a week or so when that undercard fills out more, and then we can compare it to things that we'll analyze whether things could overachieve in a way we don't expect, like examples from last year.
Right. And like we said, they could add like matches we never saw coming. Right now, I think our celebrity match is building towards Jelly Roll, but they might pop up somebody huge, something crazy could happen. I know it's only 3 Raws left, but it's basically 4 weeks until WrestleMania. So a number of matches could happen. A million things could also go wrong. But yeah, we have to give them time to build. And like that's kind of, it's almost always when we have these conversations, like it's still, the follow-up still matters. So while this promo tonight maybe didn't click all the way we wanted it to, you never know. They might just hit a home run next week, and I might be more excited for the match than I've ever been.
Yeah. And it's going to be, the main event's going to count the most. I mean, it just is. Rosa in the chat says, Mania main events work best when it feels like the end of a journey for someone. This doesn't have that. The title doesn't even feel like it's an important part of this match at all. Mark Biscotti says, yeah, Wade, when you said about what happens after the match is why I can't get into caring about it. Then what? Maybe we'll get some of that, or maybe they think we don't want people to think about it because this is sort of the end of something. It's not the progression of something. Okay. There's more great chats. If you think you have one that deserves to be read, you can super chat it. It will make air. But there is so much else to get to, and we're running long. So I will throw this super chat up. Our transition out of the Block A topic that took 90 minutes is Paul Purvis. Will we see Danhausen wrestle before WrestleMania or at WrestleMania? I thought this was Danhausen's weakest week yet in backstage segments, or weakest episode, but I still enjoy him. I mean, it's just the introduction of human followers, I mean, there's just things he does, his posture, his delivery, his lack of eye contact, his obliviousness, his willingness to just shrug off being proven wrong in a way that just acts like it didn't really happen. He's unfazed. And then the reaction to being cursed has been actually played, I think, pretty well. Even Ice Show Speed, like I thought, reacted to this. He hasn't watched WWE programming, which is always interesting. A celebrity reveals that.
Right.
But I mean, it was so fun, but it wasn't the strongest. But I assume he'll be in a match at WrestleMania, or he'll be announced as a special host.
Right. He will be at WrestleMania and probably have a reasonably prominent position. In ring is not really definitely not the point of having Danhausen. They didn't sign him because he can go out there and have great matches. They signed him for exactly what he's doing and what he's been doing. And it has been better than I would have guessed. And even though you said this week was probably like the least entertaining, it was still one of the, like for WWE comedy, it's still best case scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, another super chat. Derek Mitchell again, king of the super chats. Thank you, Derek. On this day, 25 years ago, WWE announced the purchase of WCW. Vince McMahon declared he had bought out his competition. And Shane McMahon appeared in Panama City announcing he was the new owner of WCW. So 30 years ago this month, Bret Hart said, Vince, you keep adding to the soup. And people are like, what is he talking about? Well, Vince is a booker, not just an announcer. And he's booking all these people coming to ringside, going in and out of commercial breaks to create a hook for you to stay tuned. And Bret just called on national TV and chuckled about it. That was fun. So that was my fact. That was my little date, this date in history. Derek with another one, 25 years since that moment happened. Vince in a way bought out his competition, but he also, all he did is bought the tape library and the logo and a chance to be on the last Nitro and a chance to buy out or inherit some contracts and not buy out other ones where wrestlers didn't want to get bought out because they could make a ton of money just sitting at home, not going to TV every week, being yelled at by Vince McMahon about why they're no good and they don't know how, they don't understand the business and how did you beat me for all those weeks. They didn't have to deal with that because they were getting guaranteed money on Time Warner AOL Time Warner contracts or whatever. So yes, he bought the competition, but really he bought the scraps after it had already been canceled. Words matter, but I mean, whatever. It's largely exactly that moment. It was a moment in history, Vince symbolically and literally gained rights to the name WCW. And wow, it took a long time for AEW to come around, and TNA struggled to try to be that competition for a while. But still one of the biggest days in history. And obviously, the Shane McMahon announcing he's a new owner of WCW was very symbolic of, the McMahons made it all about themselves. And that is a learning tree under which Paul Levesque came along. So.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. I'm up 2 months this. On the one hand, I'm like, it's hard to believe that was 25 years ago. It seems like very recent. Then on the other hand, I'm like, God, that was so long ago. So much has happened since then that it's 25 years ago. I would have guessed it was like 30, 40 years ago. It's just time is doing its thing. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Um, the Time Warner AOL merger was a final nail, says Tommy McLaughlin. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I was talking at the time to, Jerry Jarrett, and he wanted, to be part of that, and then, kind of that begat NWA TNA. Eric Bischoff with Fusion Media was going to buy it. I broke the story that the announcement that the sale was through. It was not. And even the Nitro book, pointed out that I had that story when others were reporting otherwise. I think somebody asked Dave Meltzer about it. Like, what about Wade's report that the Fusion deal is going through? And he's like, well, I don't know what to say, but he's wrong. It was like, oops, no, Wade was right, and everyone else is wrong on that story. But Bischoff, thought he was close. And by the way, Bischoff thought I knew things that Bischoff didn't at that time about what was going on with that. I have like boxes full of notes in a safe, like of detailing who I was talking to and giving me all this stuff. It was a fascinating time for me as a reporter. So when I think about, what happened, I think about the TV and what it meant, but I also just think about the being in the middle of all these different people coming at me with information about it and getting to report it and have scoops on it. And I still think, do the definitive reporting on that whole process is a pretty cool memory for me in the occupation that I've had all this time. But I just did what Triple H and Shane McMahon, they made about themselves. And I just turned the WCW sale into about me. What a hypocrite. Here I'm critical of McMahon's turning it into about them, and then I'm sitting here realizing I just made this about. Well, it is the Wade Keller post show. It's named after me. So, all right. Let's see. Derek Mitchell with another super chat. Derek, now I'm getting embarrassed. My condolences to the family, friends, and fans of Loverboy Dennis Condrey, best known as a member of the original Midnight Express with Randy Rose, by the way, not the other imposter members like Bobby Eaton and Sweet Stan Lane, Norval Austin too, and then later with Bobby Eaton, managed by Jim Cornette. And then in the AWA, when it was Sweet Stan Lane replacing Dennis Condrey with Bobby Eaton, managed by Jim Cornette, Paul Heyman resurrected the original Midnight Express, Dennis Condrey and Randy Rose, in the AWA at the same time when Heyman and Cornette were two of the up-and-coming young, brilliant minds in the business. So yeah, do you have any Midnight Express thoughts?
I don't. Wade, unlike CM Punk, I'm not old. So
There we go. Intentional Booking says, is the end result of Danhausen the reverse Macho Man finding a manager when he came in? As in, this is Danhausen finding someone to manage. I don't know if I want him to be a manager. I want him to be a guy with no explanation who they let through security every week.
Right, just wandering backstage, interacting with people in an amusing way. That's all you really need him for.
Yeah,
I am worried they're going to wear him out because he is on both Raw and SmackDown constantly interacting. But like I said, it's been all good so far. And I can see him as a manager doesn't even sound like the right word. I feel like valet is the appropriate word for like a lower card wrestler. Maybe I could see that working because I assume he has antics that he could be doing at ringside that would make the match more entertaining than it otherwise would be.
Will he have an official match at WrestleMania? I think he will, Joshua. I mean,
It could go either way.
I want to have an opinion on this. I don't want to go 50-50 because how lame is that when someone does a super chat and asks? But I genuinely think he either is going to be like a host and it's just a guy wandering around and that's the best use of him. And the second he gets in the ring, he just becomes a wrestler. But then there's something that thinks, no, they want him in the ring having a WrestleMania official bell-to-bell moment, maybe a mixed tag, or he's in the Andre Battle Royal. Was that going to be on SmackDown? I don't know. So I'm kind of 50-50. I could see them going, no, we'll sell merch. We need him. We need to show he's a wrestler, but maybe they hold off on it. So I'm hedging. I don't know.
My official guess is no, he does not have a match, but he is otherwise all over the show.
Yeah, I think that's...
Which is ideal.
Yep. Okay, so another comment. Danhausen always gets the chat going. Swole says, I've seen long-form Danhausen on the YouTube, on the tubes you watch, and he can do more than they are giving him. That's it. And by the way, that's why I don't think this is like going to fizzle in like 6 weeks. Like he's not a one-note joke. Like I really think can keep things interesting for years. He can be an assistant GM. He can be a manager. He can be I don't know. I don't want to give them bad ideas. I'll just stop there. There's other things he could be. All right. Intentional Running says, what would kill Danhausen's momentum would be him wrestling in a match. He's tailor-made for manager duties. Yeah. I'm not saying what I think they should do. I'm trying to think, where should you put your money? And I think it's a pretty even bet. Real Legend says, I don't know about that, Wade, in terms of me saying this was his weakest segment. This week's Danhausen segment got me to laugh the hardest. Yeah. All right. I did it structurally like it was his weakest, but it was still good. Like, I wasn't saying it was a bad. It's more just complimenting his past work. But yeah, he's
right. Well, there's no accounting for taste, and yeah, like I said, I also felt this was like the weakest use of him, but still a highlight of the show. So
yeah. Tommy McLaughlin says, who knows? Danhausen could win the IC belt in some screwy 15-man ladder match. Stop laughing. I don't know if that's if he's saying don't laugh at my comment, or he's saying to CM Punk and Paul Heyman and everyone else stop laughing. It could be it too.
I can see that.
Yeah. Tommy McLaughlin says the vibe for the lead up to WrestleMania is not bad. Is not bad, but not as of yet. OMG. Yeah, I don't know if the syntax is quite right there, but I get what I get what he's saying anyway. Okay. Wade tonight referenced a comment I made back in 2008 in chat, so he's a bit slow. Says Tom McLaughlin. I don't even. What is that? I am slow because I don't now. I feel even double slow. All right. Let's shift to some of these other topics, and let's start with the IC title match with Penta and Dom. I made the comment in my written report at PWTorch. This felt like it was a match that could have been really good and entertaining, and once it got rolling, then it turned into angles. And you felt a little bit like a sucker for thinking would be anything else. And I think that applies to even Grayson Waller. And it's more about Kofi than it was about Javon trying to prove anything against Grayson. And I worry that WWE did too much of that, does in general too much of that, but did too much of that tonight, where it's like, okay, we have a match, but it's really just filling some time till we get to an angle. I know it happens. I mean, heck, that's what Dynamite's main event last week was. You know, Young Bucks in this multi-person tag. It was just for them. It was a bunch of moves, but at least you got a lot of moves. And it went a while. It felt like a main event in length and girth, but but then it was there just to be a promo. So, yeah, go ahead, Joshua.
Yeah, no, and you're right, and that's like as you constantly say, like that's fine. You could explain it in the micro, but in the macro, when it's like seems like every other match is not a match, but it is an excuse to get somebody out and tell a story that's not related to the match. So you would think an intercontinental title match between Dom and Penta would be that could main event a show easy. That would be and could be a good compelling match. But Dom had a promo before the match, and I don't even know if he mentioned Penta or the belt. He was talking almost exclusively to Finn.
Yep.
And it was just so clear that match was, I would have predicted a screwier finish, but you knew it was not going to be a legitimate contest. It was going to be an angle wrapped around the match. And like I said, that's fine. I think that's a perfectly valid thing to do sometimes, but they do it way too much. And like you said, multiple times in this show, the match was not the point of the segment.
Yes. And you want to be not transparent or not overdo it, so it feels like they're abusing their privilege to just keep adding ingredients to the soup. All right, to quote Bret Hart. All right, Andy from Houston is up. Andy, I understand you want to bring up the women's side of tonight's Raw, so good timing. What's on your mind, Andy?
Not much. I guess, yeah, there's been so much focus on Punk and Roman, and hopefully I've talked about Brock and Oba. Oba is just amazing. But I guess I was going to make a few observations on the women tonight.
Yeah, dude.
I noticed that I never knew the size difference between Raquel and Io until tonight's segment.
Yep.
When she looked basically half her size. It was, I guess, a good trick of the camera, but it does show like how much of variable size the women are in the roster. Like you've got just about all ranges, it seems. So that was just a passing observation. I thought that was remarkable, but it it's interesting that WrestleMania still doesn't have a lot of established matches for 2 nights, 4 weeks in, but you can see they're finally building up to some of those where Io talks to Kyrie, and it looks like there's probably going to be some kind of break coming in. But would you agree that maybe it's taking too long to build to some of these matches, or are we maybe just having too much time between Royal Rumble and WrestleMania that we expect more things to happen when, 10, 15 years ago, we'd have a 6-week, 8-week period between Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. And so things could happen more naturally where we're not expecting all the matches to be established so quickly, or maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I
What
talked
be your
about
thoughts?
I talked about the daylight savings time messing with my dogs because they either have to wait an extra hour for their food or they get an hour early, and they're like, "What?" Because their internal clocks are so tuned into lunch and dinner time. And daylight savings time, whatever end we're on, it's either wait, I'm hungry. Why are you waiting an hour? So I have to ease them into it like 10 minutes a day for for 6 days, or vice versa. Just like wait a little longer and then ease it to earlier. We have this baked in clock of the rhythm between Rumble and Mania, and we expect very quickly to have the full lineup, and then if we get that, then we want to have like 3 weeks to complain about. Okay, we've known the lineup too long. We're bored. Let's move on. And there's this weird thing now where there's all this time, but we've had injuries and this really long gap between Rumble and Mania. I don't know if it's more than last year. I think it's a little less than last year, but check my facts on that. But I do think, Joshua, there is a rhythm that we're used to that's just muscle memory of where am I mentally supposed to be in terms of WrestleMania this year? And, is there too much time to build stuff up? Is battling, why don't they tell us what the matches are going to be? I'm not satisfied yet that this full lineup that they haven't even announced it is going to be good enough. And so there's this weird battle going on between those two things, and I haven't really wrapped my brain around whether it's fair or not, or indicative of bad booking, or just us needing to adjust to daylight savings time. In other words, we have to adjust to a rhythm that actually is a correction in a good way from past years.
Yeah, it is strange because when Roman and Punk first had their first promo, I'm like, oh man, how are they going to do this for basically 2 months? And here we are, like a month and a week later, and they're still doing the same thing. But like, they haven't really added much as far as the undercard especially is concerned. And it does just seem like there is so much time, and they're still waiting to the last minute on some of it. Kind of the way the AEW should do their pay-per-views, where they like 3 months between them, and they still wouldn't announce any matches till like 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
That feels like they're kind of going that way, but at least at this point they have the the main matches are established and prepared for, and they just start filling in the undercard. But it just is such a long time that it would be hard. Like if they started, I don't know, let's say Kyrie and Asuka is one of the undercard matches. If they started this back like right after the Rumble, like I don't know how many like Kabuki Warriors backstage segments I can take over the course of 3 months.
Yep.
So if they're going to start rolling now and going into a match, which should be an excellent match at WrestleMania, I mean, I think the timing on that is probably just right. I think, Wade, you're right. We're just used to things happening at a certain cadence. We're used to, during the rest of the year, like basically 4 shows, pay-per-view, 4 shows, pay-per-view. Yeah. And this is weird because a lot of it's building towards Mania. It starts at the Rumble, then there's a pay-per-view in the middle, and then it's like 6 weeks in between. And it's just an odd cadence. So I think we don't know how to deal with watching it. And I also think like they don't exactly know how to book it well.
I think it's
and pace things out either.
Yeah,
it's just kind of a disconnect on both ends.
And I am willing to and have received comments. I'll read them. I'll respond somewhat, but I haven't like come down strong in this category of either condemning or defending WWE's approach. I mean, I think we kind of, if anything, and I'm not punting on it. I just think it's fair to wait for the lineup and the story to be told. And then the week of WrestleMania, or even better, well, that's probably the best time, but it somewhat equally the week and 2 after, exhale and go, okay, they had some key injuries. These are people who came back in time. They had to call an audible on the Seth storyline. I don't believe in having your heels dug in with a super strong opinion about something that is so clearly still in progress. And as you, Josh, will point out, I think it's a combination of it's a strategy that they're trying to figure out, and they might have figured it out more than some are willing to give them credit for, or maybe we're giving them too much latitude and they're not, but there's no way to know till the next several weeks happens. And they want to sell tickets, but they've lost the goodwill with fans to buy tickets on faith at the price in the same market in this economy as they got. You should never run your business. Nobody should employ Target should. I'll do another Target thing, but it'll be brief. Target should not have as many employees on June 7th or March 20th as they do on Black Friday. You have to take context in. So, they should not be expecting the same peak enthusiasm for WrestleMania this year as when the Bloodline and Cody's journey and Sammy was red hot. And yet they're booking naively, like when they're red hot, that is a baseline that will always exist. And then they jacked up ticket prices, and now they're, the crowd's going to be super impressive. It's not like this. There's been really bad times, and this is not a bad time in wrestling. It's just, we're so used to instant sellouts, or really this confident stride, and WWE is experiencing something different because they did think, I think the bean counters and the ticket price setters were not taking into account the ebbs and flows of booking peaks and valleys, and they didn't understand we're not going to have that kind of peak this year to compete with some other years.
Yeah, and part of that, and related to that, is like with the Bloodline story and Cody finishing his story. Those were all stories that had been going on over the course of the year, whereas a lot of the stuff we're getting for this WrestleMania started in earnest at best right after the Royal Rumble. You could argue they teased Randy and Cody several times, but they didn't actually do anything with it until right after the Elimination Chamber in these last couple of weeks. So that's kind of throwing off they don't have a big, huge story that's been going on for a long time that they're paying off. It's all stuff that's come up in the last few months.
I'll go back to Annie in a second. I want to put up a comment from Intentional Rounding, who says, how did we start the show with, I don't understand it, but it's compelling, and then arrive at, they're driving people away because it's not compelling. So I'll attempt to do this in a pithy fashion. It's compelling to watch and to try to analyze, even if I don't understand it. But I do think that they're driving people away, not because it's not compelling in the moment, but because the stakes haven't been established in a compelling way that is pulling people through some of the muck of two people fans like tearing each other down. So I think it's compelling in the moment for us watching, for me, but I think that's not contradictory to they're driving people away from wanting to spend their money and go to Vegas because they aren't feeling compelled to want to be part of history this year. So compelling for me as an analyst doing a post show is different than compelling for the fan base who don't want to break the bank to be part of something that doesn't feel as historically significant as some past year main events. Joshua, is that fair? Do you want to change that or augment it at all?
I think that's right. And I think, like we say, I don't understand it, but it's compelling. And I think for fans especially, you want it to be both compelling and also you understand it. I think you want both, and that's going to drive people to the shows, to the television, to the live events.
Yep. All right, Andy, back to you. Thanks for hanging out while we answered your question and talked about a couple other things there.
Well, I guess going further into fan interest and ticket prices and all of that. So I noticed Paul Heyman has said multiple times now that Brock and Oba are main event. Mm-hmm. So do we anticipate that being the night one main event? Or do we think that's going to just be billed as a main event, but say be like the penultimate match on one of the two nights?
Joshua, they're loose with the term main event. Can you be loose enough to have more than two main events?
No, you can't. There are at best two main events. Arguably, there's only the one, and that's the last match of the second night. Now, now Paul Heyman, when he says it's the main event, he's being an advocate. He's saying it doesn't matter where you put Brock Lesnar on the card. He is the main event. And I think they've done a really good job with him at Oba. That's actually one of the more intriguing matches on the card. So while it's definitely not going to be a main event in any measurable way, it is going to be a big match, and Paul Heyman should be selling it as a main event, even though it's definitely not.
Do you think, Joshua, it's each men's world title match headlines night 1 and night 2, and that it will be Roman and Punk on night 2? Is that all? I mean, is that where your money is?
What I have assumed. Yeah, if I was making bets, I would say Cody and Randy on night 1, Punk and Roman on night 2. I mean, if I were doing it, I would want one of the women's matches there, but I don't think either one of those is hotter than either of the two men's matches, that you could not make it seem like you're just doing it because it's a women's match. Those are, I think, inarguably the two biggest matches they have going in.
I think if you go back 14 months, you can build a Rhea Jade match that would headline one of these two nights. That is not the path they took with Rhea. That's not, the path that Jade took, because I just don't think they were sure about her, or, whatever. But Rhea had a chance to be built as the great star of this era. One of the big future stars on that first Netflix, and when they had the biggest audience, and then they could have booked her as a centerpiece instead of part of an ensemble. And they might have that, but that's not what they did. They had their reasons. I'm not even here to litigate it. It's just factually speaking, this is not they're trying in a relatively short span of time, in a month, get you to believe that, get the most out of Jade and Rhea. And I think they've done a really good job, but I don't think they can get to the point where that should be closing out night 1, not only because the story isn't there, but Jade just you can't close a show in front of, 50,000, whatever, give or take 25,000 people. She's not a big stadium main event performer. And Rhea, as good as she is, you just can't end with her carrying Jade in a main event. I don't think they can get there. But symbolically, it'd be nice if they gave it the best shot they could and seemed to be planning around that. And that's why I say anytime you have anything that can even come close to being a main event of WrestleMania with women involved, you should do it. Don't debate it or talk yourself out of it, because it won't be there every year. You just don't have the depth of the division and the number of segments. Although you could argue NXT has more up and coming women than men, so that might change. But I don't know that the balance will ever tilt to women getting more segments than men. Andy, anything else you want to bring up?
Well, you kind of segued back into something I was going to mention. So the vignette for Liv Morgan last week. I guess I was reminded of that when I saw the Tiffany Stratton highlight this week. But it seems like that women's championship match is definitely lower on the totem pole than even Rhea and Jade, because they don't have as many direct interaction segments anymore. Instead, they're doing vignettes and kind of back and forth video packages. So where do y'all see that being on the card? And do you think maybe it's a mismatch for the Raw Women's Championship? I feel like there's women that are regarded more highly that I think would bring more prestige to the title and have what would intrigue fans as a better match, whether it's more exciting or just, the weekly interactions are more compelling, that kind of thing.
Joshua, what do you think?
Yeah, not unlike what Wade was saying about Rhea and Jade. Had they been building towards something over the course of the last year or so, they could have put together any number of much bigger matches than Liv and Stephanie, which I think is still, they've done a pretty good job with it. I wasn't super psyched about that when Liv won the Rumble, but I think they've done pretty good keeping that coming across as like a WrestleMania worthy match. Definitely not main eventing. I imagine it's right in the middle of night 1 or night 2. It's not going to lead off. It's not going to be
I think they have a little work to do to get to that status, by the way. Like they're moving towards it, but I don't know if they're quite at a WrestleMania women's title match level for me yet. I think they might be on a trajectory to it. I'm just interjecting I'm not down on it. I think there's still work to do to get to that level.
Right, and they are working on it. Like I said, they're working towards it. Maybe
Yep.
they haven't achieved that status yet. But like we were saying, they haven't been building this match very long. They've been building it since not even right after the Rumble. They did a little thing where Liv didn't even make a decision for a couple of weeks. And part of this has been kind of a complaint I've had over the course of the years. They've had a lot of the prominent women with more star power just kind of messing around with the women's tag titles.
Yeah.
Like you can imagine Charlotte and Stephanie Vicker automatically would be a bigger match than Liv. And just like Charlotte and Jade might have been a more interesting match than Rhea and Jade, or just they have stars like, and Io is right now not doing anything, but she's like one of the most over and possibly their best in-ring performer. And don't get me wrong, if she ends up slotted in a match with Asuka, that'll be a great match, but she could be competing at a higher level, for instance, in a world title match. But they haven't been building that, and again, they've only been building the Liv Stephanie thing since right before Elimination Chamber. So they're building it, but yeah, it's not feeling like it's going to be a prominent, important match on the card.
I don't know if the women's division going into WrestleMania is being booked the way it's being booked because of a strategy of having parity or a strategy to not give anybody leverage at contract renegotiating time, so they all know they're expendable and interchangeable, which I wouldn't rule out with TKO, that they've just said, women's division, we don't want anyone bigger than the division. But it also could be a not a particularly well-executed version of what we're advocating for the men, which is let's get some of the younger women in with some of the established women. And, the Lyra Bailey link is there. Stephanie can work against a pro like Liv. Rhea's, not older, ready to pass the torch, but she's enough of a pro to work with Jade, although that could just be more happenstance. But, in the Charlotte Alexa thing just worked out well enough. They didn't want to end it, but maybe they had other things in mind. So some of it also just could be audibles based on something went unexpectedly well that changed us from our plans. We're going to delay doing something. But it doesn't, if you didn't look at which matches were for the title, when all the women's matches are announced for night 1 and night 2, if you didn't watch WWE for the last year and you didn't see any stipulations or titles and you looked at that lineup, you would not know that Becky and AJ wasn't headlining night 1 of WrestleMania for the women's title. You wouldn't know if Rhea and Jade was for a title or not. You would not assume Stephanie and Liv was one of the women's titles. I think if you didn't watch TV for a year, you'd think, oh, Vaquera's on the uprise and Liv is back. Like you wouldn't think that's one of the top 2 matches. You wouldn't think Becky was involved in a secondary title match. So, we'll see where it lands, but the point in saying that is this is not what we see is not the culmination of a clear hierarchy like we see with the men, where it's like Roman, Punk, Cody, Orton. We tried to get Drew in there, but the timing wasn't there. If we needed Gunther, we could have plugged and played him. Brock is more special attraction, but there's a clear hierarchy at the top. And then there's the LA Knight level, or Carmelo Hayes, or I don't even know. But with the women, it's just, nope, they're all just about the same. And there's some young and some old matched against each other. And as Becky said, no one thought I'd go for the secondary title. No, we didn't, but you did. So yeah, again, let's circle back in 3 weeks, and we'll have a much better idea of it. But yeah, this was not a master plan that led to a culmination of a clear-cut women's main event, Andy.
So I got one last observation before I let y'all can go on or end the cast here. So
those are 2 choices.
Well, so AJ Lee has been kind of portrayed as a returning old timer, but I thought it would be interesting to point out, not only is Becky Lynch 2 months older than her, she started wrestling 5 years before her. So yeah. Becky is a lot longer in the tooth in the wrestling business than AJ Lee is. So it's just funny to me, the dynamic between the two and the way each of them is sort of being displayed in their feud.
I would say that the real life story of those two is better aligned with AJ as a heel and Becky as a face. Becky worked harder, longer, out of the spotlight. She was the 4th of the horsewomen. I remember being at house shows, just looking at her going, well, she's no Charlotte. She's not Bailey the hugger. She's certainly not the worker and bump taker that Sasha Banks is, but she's pretty good. She's scrap. Like, if you live through that in real time, she wasn't going to be like the biggest star coming out of that group, or even in at the level of Charlotte and Sasha, or even Bailey. But her story is she stuck around and she took a break for a baby, which is like, that's not the same as storming off angrily or whatever. And then AJ Lee got like this really relatively short, big push, Joshua. She wasn't like a long journey to the top, but she was outspoken and represented something that was not, purple butterflies and diva, flirtatious stripper pole dance moves coming out. I mean, the skipping was a little weird, but that was kind of, that was kind of her character that she was playing, and it fit. So to me, the story is like, AJ got burned hot for a short period of time, got a big push quickly. It went to her head. She stormed off, threw a fit when her husband left. And now she's back and she wants everything handed to her as if she was the one who revolutionized the business, when all she did is, say a few things and happen to be being pushed at the right time when the whole Divas facade, the Jenga tower, is falling down due to fan rebellion. And she happened to be the face of it. Credit her for that. But it all went to her head. I mean, there's a story you can tell there. I'm just kind of thinking, what's the babyface promo about AJ that a babyface Becky could give? And then Becky could be the person who stuck around and worked harder, was not gifted a top spot. When she got one, she stuck around and appreciated it, held the title longer, main evented longer, built more of a legacy. And AJ's trying to blow what happened to her out of proportion when she just happened to be at a parade and got to speak for a minute. But it was Becky who really put in the work for years before and years after. That's why it feels incongruent, because I think, Joshua, the real life stories would reverse these roles. And I think if you subtract the evidence of the last year or last few years with Becky, Becky's a better babyface and AJ's a better heel, just in general. If you drop them into 2026, I think AJ would be a phenomenal heel, because she's got that sort of, I complain about Willa doing it, just sort of that condescending, talking to third graders about how they're not playing defense in the soccer field hard enough vibe to her. And in the way that she makes her points. And Becky is super entertaining and likable, even when she's trying to be snotty. So that's my take on Andy's comment. What do you think?
Yeah, I've been with you on that. Since AJ's return, she's kind of portrayed herself, and the company has also portrayed her like she was a trailblazer that really moved the entire women's wrestling industry forward, when really she was mostly just happened to be an actual good wrestler when there were none. But Becky has surpassed her in every facet of the business several times over, and been around. And as we pointed out, Becky's the same age as AJ, but she's just been around doing it longer and better than AJ. And yet they portray it like AJ is this returning hero and Becky is some sort of horrible person for hanging around and being entertaining for the last decade. I thought tonight Becky kind of, she's been on the verge of irritating and cringy on purpose because she's a heel and that's what she's going for. But I thought this week she was didn't seem as unhinged. I guess she seemed more hinged than normal. And I thought it really worked to her credit. I thought it made for a better segment because some of the AJ and Becky segments have been not an entertaining watch on television. I thought this one came off pretty well. Although I didn't particularly like that AJ used Becky's daughter in a line and that was a big face pop. And then later Paul Heyman used the same daughter and it was a horrible heel thing to say. It's kind of a dissonance there between those two because of how marriage works, I guess.
Yeah, or just the intended, the character saying it. Yeah. Derek Mitchell in the chat on this says, I enjoyed Becky's promo tonight because its rationale makes sense as to why she's upset, even though Michael Cole has painted Lynch as bitter and delusional. Tommy McLaughlin says Becky versus AJ has a great build and would work as a main event. Derek says, yeah, Becky and AJ is a bigger, more marquee match than Liv and Stephanie, and it feels like CM Punk, Chris Jericho, or Daniel Bryan versus Sheamus at WrestleMania 28. Not much of a build for the world title. Goodfellas says Becky versus AJ is fun, but their chemistry hasn't hit for me yet. AJ versus Bailey cooked, and I actually feel better about their rematch. Yeah, some people have said that the Bailey AJ thing could have worked better. or did work better and could work better going forward. But I don't, they're not going to do that.
I mean, it worked really well in the match. I don't know if they would have great back and forth promo segments that were anything better than Becky is doing.
Yeah. Yep. Intentional Rounding says, I mentioned it earlier. Both Heyman and AJ mentioned Becky and Seth's daughter, and that was odd. And as you say, Joshua, pointing it out in a way where the reaction's supposed to be different, just based on context or who's delivering it. Tommy says AJ was entertaining when she was psycho. Terrible. I know. Rude Dog says AJ is one of the most off-putting babyface acts I can remember in a long time. Do you understand that, Joshua? That feeling?
Yeah, she just seems like she's a little like she buys her own hype more than she should.
Right.
And I don't know, she's kind of an off-putting babyface in the way that her husband can be when he's feeling particularly self-righteous. So yeah, they kind of make sense as a pair.
Yep.
That kind of puts her in the league with the Bellas. As far as the self-promotion and perceived significance in wrestling history.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's something to. I mean, the Bellas were around longer, but yeah, I mean, there's a difference, but the kind of the landing is similar. They both have. I think AJ believes it, and I think the Bellas. Well, I think the Bellas believe it too. I had a differentiation in my head of how to articulate why it rings a little differently with me. It just feels like the Bellas were around longer. And so if just sheer number of weeks on TV counts for something, they have more of a case. But then it's offset because AJ's more over than the Bellas currently and was more over at her peak than the Bellas were at their peak. So, yeah, they both kind of have different flaws in their arguments, but they both come at it in a way that feels a little either delusional or self-aggrandizing.
But at least they're portraying the Bellas as heels who are giving themselves more credit than they deserve at this point, whereas AJ is expecting to be cheered for her accomplishment.
Yeah. All right, Andy, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep, you bet. All right, Opa, Femi, Brock Lesnar, Joshua.
Yes, that was a huge segment on the show. I mean, they opened with it. I thought, that was I thought that was a very exciting start. I mean, say what you want about Brock Lesnar, the person, and or what he represents, and all. You can say any number of things about Brock Lesnar, but when he shows up, it's usually a big moment, and he's there to do his job, and he usually does his job very well. Like the way he visually and like with his facials sells for Oba Femi, I think is doing wonders for him. I didn't appreciate necessarily the video they showed on their encounter last week, where they made it seem like Oba Femi power bombing Brock Lesnar shook the industry to its core and changed the direction of the world. They kind of oversold that, but it was a big moment for Oba, and actually thought this week was obvious. Just because a power bomb that like came out of nowhere, as opposed to he knocked him over the top rope. This is like less impactful. But I did really like Heyman's promo, because you may not know this, but Heyman cut a pretty decent promo in the ring. I thought he did a good job kind of framing where Brock is and why he is fully confident that he will beat Oba, because he's beaten every rising like young person ever. When you think somebody's unbeatable, Brock will beat them, and that's kind of how Heyman painted it. And he's kind of a master of painting whatever he wants to paint. Yeah.
Again, you can't fully judge if Brock is really putting over Oba until we see what happens at WrestleMania or in a rematch if they go that way. But Brock is, and the thing with Brock is people go, he has the clout to have short matches and dominate his opponents and wrestle a part-time schedule. And it's like, yes, but he's being booked exactly how Vince McMahon and Paul Levesque want to book him. And he does exactly what he's told, because I don't think, short of, like when Steve Austin was asked by Vince McMahon, we want you to lose on short notice without much hype to Brock Lesnar. And I know Steve feels like he should have shown up to say no and not, done it over the phone or whatever. And I've argued with Steve on his podcast. I've been on his podcast 40 times, self-rake. And it comes up frequently. And I'm like, Steve, stop apologizing for that. That was a bad booking decision based on politics. And they shouldn't use your equity because of their lack of long-term planning and flaws in their booking. and you were right to stand up for yourself. He's like, well, yeah, but I should have at least gone to the building. I'm like, okay, fine, but don't apologize that you should have just done what they told you. You had the clout not to do that. Brock doesn't care enough except for something like that, where he goes, Paul be in his ear. He'd be like, Brock, they're using your equity to make up for their own mistakes. You gotta say no. But mostly Brock's like, just pay me, put me on first, let me get on my jet, fly home. Brock's a guy, he can leave, his kids can start watching a Disney movie and he can hop on the jet, fly, have a WrestleMania match, get on the jet, fly back, and catch the end of the movie with his kids. That's what he wants. And that's his clout, and he uses it, and it's fine. He quit the business once because he just didn't want to be traveling. Good for him. He's an introvert homebody. Nothing wrong with that. But I think people mistake him for the big ego main event wrestlers who are just, I need fame. The Paul Levesque, just this hole in the ego gas tank that just means you have to fill it constantly with more features and interjecting himself constantly and things. And it just would be a sad way to live. Brock is not a sad way to live. He just wants to be with his family and he does what he's told and whatever. That's what's happening. So when they say, this is all leading to this, put Femi over as if you've never encountered a physical match or somebody who's physically more intimidating than you, and you're scared and you're shocked and this is new territory for you. Brock's like, sure, you're paying me a lot of money and it's a work and I'm an actor and it's Sean Penn doing his thing in a an award. He's like, he's not worried about the character having dignity at the end. Well, I'm not getting into the spoiler, but like, he's not advocating for that. He's like, it's the old phrase, pin me and pay me. That's Brock's attitude. And he is a pro and always has been on the mic. He's underrated on the microphone in part because of his body language and how believable he is in whatever he's asked to do. Most of what he is asked to do looks like a insecure, big egoed main eventer on a power play, forcing him to look dominant. Instead, that was the best way to use Brock Lesnar. But now the best way to use Brock Lesnar is different. And that is do what I think all the top guys should be looking at how to give back, which is let's get this new guy over. And the segment this week added to that, Joshua.
Right. Yeah, and you only hope that that's because they're building to a match where they continue to put Oba over, or a feud that runs over a couple months where he gets over in the end. I've been watching WWE booking for years. Part of me says, oh, Oba keeps getting over on him on the way to the pay-per-view means he is losing at that pay-per-view. So you hope that's not the way they're going. But in the meantime, I think they're doing a good job making this seem like a big match, which it is. And of the young stars that they have coming in, this is the only one that has a real high-profile match, like set in stone at WrestleMania, and a possible star-making possibility at WrestleMania as well.
There's more than three distinct options, but one distinct option is Oba looks dominant and beats Brock. Another is Oba looks dominant in the build and he loses to Brock. And another is Oba doesn't look dominant in the build and loses to Brock. So we are getting at least the middle version. And if the middle version is Oba looks dominant, but Brock pulls out a win, but it takes everything he has, and that's a story they tell. And then Oba's on a journey to show that if he ever gets a rematch against Brock, he's better than him. Well, that's a sports fan story. Good regular season, but you face the team in the playoffs and you can't beat them. And then eventually you do. The Bulls with Jordan went through that. It took them a while before they got to the finals and won a title. They were stopped. I don't know, it was by Detroit or something. So that is a sports story. And if they tell it with Oba, I don't think we should all, rebel against it. But if Brock's not going to eventually lose to Oba, then it's like, okay, Oba's your new star, but he's not as good as a half interested near retirement Lesnar. You don't want that being the last thing. It's how people look at the Houston Rockets, and I'm going back to 90s NBA now, but Hakeem Olajuwon was, won the title for 2 years, but that was only because Jordan wasn't there. He never just got to be the best. It was at best asterisk. And you don't want Oba's big push to be he's the best when Brock isn't around. But when Brock's around, he's second best in that category of a beast. So they should be careful with it. And I hope they are. I don't think they're scared to tell Brock we need you to lose to Oba. I don't think they are. So they shouldn't act scared. They should book like we need to create next year's main eventers out of past main eventers, and this is a chance to do it. Brock can still have an issue that's very personal with Paul Heyman and Braun Breaker if they go that route. and have a match, and it won't matter that Brock lost. Brock's lost before, and he's still the beast, and he can sell. So, yeah. And Derek Mitchell, who else runs in with the Bulls lost to the Pistons 3 years in a row before finally beating them in 91. There we are. And Goodfellas says, shout out to Hakeem Olajuwon. He ruled. So there we are. Joshua, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, he's right. Hakeem Olajuwon ruled when the real ruler was not in the league. That's true. But yeah, like you said, Brock's a pro. As long as Brock respects the guy he's working with, which based on these first 2 weeks, he clearly does. Paul Heyman has told him, hey, this guy's worth it. Let's do business. Brock will do business. Nobody should be scared to tell Brock, hey, you're taking the pin here, because Brock has no problem taking the pin. Yeah, and I think if they don't have a long-term thing planned out for him, then Oba should just straight up win and just establish him as the new dominant big guy.
Tommy McLaughlin says, great explosive open. The way he put over will not as impactful as last week. When the match happens, I see Brock doing business. Another super chat from Derek was put in here. Since returning to WWE in 2012, Brock has only lost to Triple H, Cena, Taker, Goldberg, Rollins, Reigns, McIntyre, Lashley, and Cody. Oba is next. When you say only lost to, that's a pretty long list.
Right. Although
that's like 9 guys.
Unfortunately, you look at it, though, only a couple of those were like guys on the come up.
Right.
Like Triple H, Cena, Taker. Oh, those Goldberg.
Yeah.
What a waste of a Brock loss. But like Rollins, Reigns, McIntyre, I think Cody, those were all
Cody
building a guy up, especially Cody.
Yeah.
I think that was a big part of getting Cody over as a main event talent was when he feuded with Brock.
Yep, for sure. Real quick, what'd you think of the Heyman Seth segment? We've talked about a lot of stuff, but that was weird. I don't know where they're going with it. The restraining order thing. Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, apparently Seth is not going to WrestleMania. He's going to prison. Assuming Heyman isn't lying, and he does have, like, according to the law, he's going to prison because he just
can you violate a restraining order you don't know about?
Well, maybe not. But Heyman told him he had the restraining order, and he still ran back after he knew. So, ignorance of a law or a restraining order is probably not a defense. Yeah. I will give them this, though. The cops looked like actual real cops, and that was very exciting for me. But yeah, I have no idea what they're doing with Seth. I was glad that he didn't appear with like the Scooby-Doo gang dancing around him this week. Although I don't know why he needs to come through the crowd wearing 2 masks. He's a superstar with a very catchy song. He could have walked right down the aisle and it would have been fine.
I have the answer.
You have the answer?
Yeah, the canon answer is sometimes it's him, but sometimes it won't be because he's going to come from a different direction. And so if he came always without a mask, nobody would look at a mask guy in the future and think it could be Seth because he comes out without it.
That is probably accurate. I would like to not see mask guys in the future where that would be an issue where I need to question whether or not it's really Seth. I would like for there to be a moratorium on black mask hoodie guy for 9 months.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what, unless Breaker is recovering faster than anybody knows, I have no idea what Seth is doing at WrestleMania. It kind of sounds like he's going to be wrestling Paul Heyman, which that sounds like not a good match, although it could be an interesting segment.
Yeah. I don't know why I find irrational charm in the non-playable character mask guys of Seth just look like they're malfunctioning on an old Atari 2600, just blipping around randomly as NPCs as Seth just sort of reveals himself as the actual playable character, so to speak. I get people are just rolling their eyes and hate it and think it's stuff, but I don't know, something about just Seth being the chaos agent and sending a bunch of people out there to just run around being all spooky. I don't know. For me, it almost feels like an upgrade from a lot of what Seth was doing in the Elton John heel days with the crowd cheering along with everything he did.
I think that says more about his previous incarnations than this one.
Yeah, or Mike just guilty pleasures, like in wrestling.
Right, you just love a bunch of dudes in black masks dancing around in a ring. That's what you want. Nobody wants to see wrestling matches.
That is a misrepresentation of my sympathetic view of them. Joshua, anything else you want to bring up before we finish up here?
I took notes, but I mean, we could talk about, I know we talked about Jey Uso in reference to the main event, but he also had a tag team title match that ended in disqualification because he purposely faced Jey, just walloped poor Austin Theory in the face with brass knuckles. Like the LA Knight's like, I thought you would kind of try to hide the fact that you were using the brass knuckles. Yeah, so I assume they're still building towards Logan and henchman number 2 Austin Theory against the Usos at WrestleMania for the tag titles, which I guess good if you're getting the tag titles on WrestleMania. They haven't been. I actually forgot the Usos were the tag champions until they entered tonight. So
Yeah.
I guess they're doing something. They're telling a story there.
Yep. Very good. Anything else, Joshua, in your notes or otherwise?
No, not in my notes or otherwise.
All right. Perfect. Intentional Ronnie says, "My God, thank you for mentioning that, Josh. Using real cops and real security guards. The fake cops in development is bigger and better, greater than, I guess, than the fake cops and developmental goons." So there we are. All right, very good. Anything we didn't talk about that you want us to talk about? Wade Keller podcast at gmail.com. Join us on the flagship tomorrow. Joshua, you might even have an email, maybe?
It'll be a rant, but yeah.
Good. All right. So look for that. That is on our blue logo show. So if you have not subscribed to that yet and you're not a VIP member, it is free. Just search Wade Keller in your podcast app. Subscribe to the flagship. That includes not only the weekly Tuesday flagship, but also occasional mailbags, our pay-per-view or PLE previews, media Q&As, some classic interviews, other first-run content, along with flashbacks that go back 15 years, like to flagships with Jason Paul and me from 15 years ago, on that feed for free. Of course, if you go VIP, then all our free shows are part of the VIP feed, customizable. You can have multiple feeds with a VIP member, by the way. So you have just individual shows or clusters of shows, so you can stay more organized with current stuff and flashbacks and all the formats. But one cool part is commercial breaks skipped right over. So there's no fast forwarding or anything. It just jumps right from content to content. It's a perk along with the VIP exclusives. So if you want to go VIP, I encourage you to do so. PWTorch.com/GoVIP gives you all the details on all the ways to sign up, including some free trial periods through Patreon or the Apple option. So check it out. Joshua, thanks again very much. And we look forward to your collision reports and anything else that ask you to do that you say yes to, that you help out with. And we might have even more news about stuff soon for you.
Absolutely. I say yes to everything.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. We will put the closing kind words from the chat on the screen as we sign off.